Howdy, everybody. Today is Tuesday, July 9th, 2024, and the time is 5:30 p.m. We're here for the regular session of the Coppell City Council. We do have a quorum present, so I'll call the meeting to order. We will be convening into work session in the first floor conference room. The public is invited and encouraged to join us. Thank you very much.
They were too busy getting ready with elections or doing elections and stuff, so.
They had those going on. The French had theirs going on.
Sounds like the French had a very interesting thing going on there, so.
Talking for power.
You're in charge of agenda, right? Yes. Well, I mean, yeah, you and Mike. I need to talk to you. Find out if anything is happening.
Somebody at the front door?
Next meeting.
You'll be gone?
Potentially.
Is somebody outside of town center trying to get in? Hello?
I can arrange it. It's a business trip. I can arrange it for the next morning. But I don't know if there was anything crucial going on.
Do we ever do anything crucial? Bijou, are you all right on that side of the table by yourself over there?
Oh, no, got Mike. Mark's gonna be here. Everybody else, everybody else is just you and me.
Hey, you that side of the table, so, okay?
Wait on the phone.
Ariana's not going to be here. I'm going to sit.
Oh.
Hold on. Hold on. I'm taking a photo and sending it to you.
See what it feels like.
It's kind of behind you instead of in front of you.
You won't be able to see anything in the camera.
So, where's Ramesh?
He just went in the kitchen.
It's over. I'm sending it to Brianna right now.
I got to raise the seat. You'll see what it's like to sit on the good side.
Hi, Mayor.
Good afternoon, everybody. The time is 5:34, and we're here for a work session of the Coppell City Council. I think we're going to have a fairly full agenda, so let's get started. Item A is a discussion regarding the agenda items. But before we get into that, I would like to introduce Harshva Vinod Kumar. Harshva asked for a, what did you want? You wanted to follow me around for the day? So he wanted to follow me around for the day, and I explained that my mayor duties really started around 4:30 in the afternoon. So we've been here for the past hour, going over the agenda. He's going to be sitting here kind of watching the work session, and he'll be attending the city council meeting. He is a junior at Coppell High School with plans to go into some type of public service after college. His desire for college is still very questionable at this point.
Wait, what? What's that because of the choice of school?
He was talking about the one down in Austin. What was the name of it?
UC.
Oh, that one. So we're welcoming him to the city council meeting, and you guys can grill him later. So let's see. Tonight on the agenda, we've got. The only thing I noticed that we've got is Bob has got some particular language that will be needed to use to approve item number 9. Mm-hmm. And I assume that you will be providing that to whoever.
We've got it. Miss Kim, I believe, has that.
Okay. So whoever has the desire to make that motion, make sure you use the language that Kim provides you. Mm-hmm. Other than that, anybody have anything on the agenda that you'd like to talk about, ask about? Consent agenda items, regular agenda?
I was going to ask to take C off the consent agenda.
Did you have any specific questions about it, or just?
I just think it's serious enough, it's severe enough that we should, I don't think we should put on the consent agenda.
Okay, done, Don?
I have a question about C. As far as enforcement, so how do we enforce? Because we're going from, what is it, 3-day to 2-day, on stage one, we're looking at just a stage one, 3-day to 2-day, as well as doing the even odd schedule, which, do we have that today? The even odd, on stage one we do? Okay, so that's not a change, so it's just the 2-day to 3-day, just the number of days, okay. And as far as enforcement, how do we enforce it?
So the idea is that we are going to, if the ordinance is passed, we will give a grace period until next summer. So between now and next May 1st, we will educate folks on the 2-day watering and the needs for the irrigation. Your lawn really only needs 2 days. And then enforcement will be, so we have our dashboard that we can look at the irrigation, folks irrigating, and it's really going to be more of education, just reminding folks that, hey, did you know that there's a schedule to follow during the conservation periods? If it becomes a problem with an individual, then we will reach out and let them know that, hey, there's a potential for violation.
Okay.
So it's really, what we really want to do is educate people between now and next summer. And we're going to have a campaign that explains everything and tells everybody what's to expect.
Okay.
And then enforcement will be as needed
Okay.
based off of repeat violators.
Okay. And if I read the memo correctly, this is a very similar schedule to a lot of the other DWU
That is correct.
cities.
That is correct.
And DWU actually requires, or has some kind of requirement.
They have a
or-
requirement that we are supposed to have a drought contingency and conservation plan in line with what they operate since we purchased our water from them.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be exact, but it has to be in line. And so, out of all our customer cities, we, along with a few others, are the only ones left to go to 2-day.
Okay. Are there, and from our technology, are we able to tell when people are, like, specific addresses are watering?
Yes.
You can?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thanks. That's all.
Bijou?
Yeah, so Mike, repeat offenders or violators, what is the penalty?
So we have in the new ordinance a $2,000 a day fine if we want to pursue that route. It's in the ordinance for that. Previously, I want to say it was $500 a day, and we've increased it to the maximum allowable.
So repeat violators means you send a letter to them?
Correct. The first notification will be a letter or a phone call saying, hey, we've noticed your watering schedule is outside of watering hours. And it's an education piece. We just want to notify you that we have a conservation effort in place, and we request that you adhere to the watering hours. If we continue to see that, we will issue another notice repeating the same thing, and if there's a repeat, then we will issue a fine if that's the case.
How do we make sure that we are not targeting certain group of people or certain area, certain house and residents and so on?
So we run especially during the summer months, we run a report. Once we start, right about now, we're starting to run reports on daily usage and to start seeing the trends of who is watering the most and or who's utilizing the most consumption. And so based off those reports, that's how we would, so we're not targeting anyone specific, it's just based off the data we're receiving from the municipalities.
Thank you.
Ramesh?
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, actually, Don's question triggered my question. Thought he asked you if we are able to specifically pinpoint with technology who's using the sprinkler system. How will you do that? I mean, what if I'm standing there and using a hose to water my?
The sprinkler systems have a usage chart that you can follow based off the heads and the water consumption. So inches per hour essentially is what it goes by, and you can estimate how much is coming off a sprinkler system versus a soaker hose or a hand watering. And so there's charts that show those curves of how much water can actually be used. The idea is, once we get over a threshold, folks use on average, on a month, 10 to 15,000 gallons a month. If we start seeing 20, 25, 30,000, then we know that there's issues.
Okay.
So they also passed out little rain gauges that you stuck in your yard to measure the amount of rain that your sprinkler system was putting out. And they stuck down in the grass and you couldn't even see them, but they were bright orange. And I used them, what was that, last year that you did that or a year before? I can't remember.
I think it was the year before.
I remember that I used one and I had to make some adjustments because like Mike was saying, I had the timing for the different zones wrong. And I don't know if you guys have gone into the portal, the water portal. If you take a look at your average usage over the year, it's very clear when the summer hits because your water usage just jumps sky high compared to the rest of the year. So we've got the data is available to do everything he's talking about. Don?
I've got just one more follow-up, and you may not know this answer, but I know there are more and more of these sprinkler controllers, automatic sprinkler controllers that sort of, I don't know if they're AI based, but they're smart controllers, and they sort of decide the schedule based on weather and other factors. Do you know, are there ways to schedule, like if we're gonna go like a maximum of 2 days and it may even have to be certain days or something that you're limited to, are there ways to actually set up those schedules to work the schedule within what our parameters are? Do you know?
Yes, there is. I personally, I have one at my house.
Okay.
And in Louisville, we've been 2-a-day watering since 2013. And so I have mine, it's a smart controller, and you can schedule it on the days that you need, and it measures the moisture in the ground, and it can tell you how much water you need, and they're handy.
And it'll work within.
It'll work within
whatever
hours.
the requirement, the ordinance requirement.
That's correct.
Okay, and that would be, just an idea, might be a great part of the education process as we go is, for people who have those and may or may not know. I don't know how I would know this, but some of us may not know how to do that.
Right.
And so any kind of education along those lines would probably help also. Oh, you got me? You'll let me know? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So we are working on an education campaign. There's a website called Water is Awesome that the region puts out, and that website is awesome itself. It tells you, you can look at it for tradition for the week. It'll tell you how much you should be watering that week for your yard.
Yeah, but I think it's great, especially this year-long sort of runway here to get people educated, and I know this is all a piece of how much water the city buys and how much we use, and that continues to go up, and we continue to, staff has done a great job the last few years trying to stay within those limits, and it's becoming more difficult as there are more and more houses and more uses, so I think it's a great move that we're making to try to help with the overall usage of our water here.
Right, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Jim?
I had a question about the Rolling Oaks deal.
Is that Sherry or Jessica? Sherry?
Yep,
Sherry.
I'm here.
Okay, so, can I go and ask? Oh. Hey Sherry, how's it going? Okay, so, between Schedule A and Schedule B, there's, really wide variety of services and things that are being done, and all that's very thorough. What are we contractually, since it's a municipally owned funeral home, or cemetery, what are we contracting with the people that are buying plots with respect to the maintenance of the surrounding areas? You mentioned weed eating around urns and tombstones, it creates a little wear and tear on the gear and stuff like that. What's our contractual requirement with our standard form contract for people that are acquiring plots and that sort of thing with respect to that maintenance?
Right, so we are required to maintain the full property, so if that's what you're asking. So all the lawn maintenance, weed eating, mowing, watering, all maintenance are surrounded by that, whether they own that piece of property, but we maintain the physical property.
So, we really have an obligation to everyone that's purchased a plot out there, or that's, do you call them customers?
Yep, families,
okay.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. To actually do this.
Yes, and we have a standard in Coppell as well, so obligation and standard, yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anything else? So one other item, we do have a proclamation and it's recognizing Parks and Recreation, our Community Experiences Group. Anybody want to have a chance to speak on that one?
Sure.
Jim, anybody else?
I get out there and enjoy the parks all the time.
Nash.
It's the least I can do.
All right.
I'll say something too.
No.
Hey, Brianna.
Oh, I already sent her the picture.
Oh, she sent it to me. All right.
Yeah, you're just away one meeting and you see what happens.
I know, I see it, and you're like,
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to take control back. Brianna can be quiet. Thank you for muting yourself. Item B is a presentation by the Coppell Chamber of Commerce regarding the Discover Coppell campaign. We started this a couple of years ago, and Ellie is obligated to come in and talk to us, kind of bring us up to date about how things are going, what's going on, and future plans. So,
you ready?
we're ready.
No, it's there, right, okay. Hang out.
Okay, good evening and welcome to everyone, and thank you for allowing me to be here to present to you. What you're seeing up here on the screen right now, of course, is our latest photos that we've had taken for Discover Coppell, and these were some of the items that we're using for our advertising. What I'd like to do is kind of walk you through what took place this past year with the funding that you guys gave us, show you what we've been able to accomplish, and then present to you what we're looking for 24, 25, and what our goals are and what we hope to accomplish with that, and then what kind of budget we're going to need for that. So of course, you guys saw our mission last year. We updated it just a little bit, but our goal, of course, is to establish us as a premier destination. We do not call ourselves, Discover Coppell, we do not call ourselves a convention and visitors bureau because we don't have one. We are what's referred to in this market as a destination marketing organization. You will hear us refer to as a DMO. And so that's where we position ourselves. There is a little visitors bureau here, as y'all know, which is through our museum, and we refer people to there if people want items or trinkets or information on the history of Coppell and things like that. But we do not have a formal convention and visitors bureau. Now, this is very small, and I'm not going to sit here and read every bit of that, but the council has this information, or most of it, but actually I have more than this. I just put the basic ones on here in your packet that I forwarded to you already. But there were just a few things that I wanted to point out, and this is what we were able to do with the 23-24 funding. As you guys know, our funding runs from November of one year through October of the next year. Now your budget runs October through September, but we usually get that funding in the end of October, and so we actually run our campaigns November through October. So one of the significant things that we did differently this past year was I had come to you back in 23, yeah, asking for funding for a contract employee to actually go out and market our hotels, but instead we opted, don't know what that happened there, instead we opted to hire an outside company called Hotel Resources. Did I do that or did you do that? Okay. But it's called Hotel Resources, and they are a contract organization, and their sole purpose is to market our hotels. And so they are basically a telemarketing firm that are on the phones most of the day, and they're reaching out to known conferences that they know are coming to the DFW area, and marketing our convention, marketing, our conference center. That's what they're called, right, at 4 Points. Our conference center, and some of the smaller events and things that are happening here. And so that's what they've been doing. It was cheaper for us to use them than to try and hire an outside, or try to hire a contract employee that we would have to manage and all of that. So it saved us some funding in those areas. Everything else I think that you guys have already been made aware of. We have grown our Discover Coppell Advisory Council that we had originally put together. It originally consisted of the chamber staff. We have a contract marketing, web master that manages our website and does all the coordination with the city on the information that's on that website. We have a contract employee that manages our social media that is separate from what is Belmont marketing firm. Belmont is the company that we contracted with initially in the very beginning that handles all of our advertising, and that's our paid advertising. And I'll talk about them a little bit more. So in addition to Belmont, we also have Hotel Resources marketing our hotels. We have a social media manager that handles our what we call organic social media. And then we have our webmaster that manages our website. And then, of course, the chamber oversees all of that. Any questions on the highlights that I gave y'all from that? Okay, yes.
So when did we start using the hotel resources folks?
They went into effect last October.
Okay.
Yes.
Has there been any kind of increase in the number of rooms rented?
I talked with the hotels. They were not tracking them. They have started tracking them now, but they have seen an increase, and we have booked, I think it's like $70,000 in events that are so it's 70,000 in events. The problem that we run into, and I was going to talk about it in our upcoming stuff, is that we don't have a convention center here. And so it's kind of hard. The other hotels like True can take up some of the slack for 4 Points, which is our conference center. But even our conference center with True, we're limited on the amount of space and the amount of the size of a convention that we can hold here. But right now, what they have tracked, what they have presented us is about 70,000 in events for the conference center. But that does not include Aloft or Fairfield.
Okay, thank you.
Ellie,
Anything else?
working with your hotel resources, are you also working with Coppell Arts Center? Because when they have key events, are there shows where people need to stay in a hotel?
Yes. What Hotel Resources has for their areas that we can book events and conferences are the 4 hotels plus the Arts Center. If someone's looking for, like, if it's a wedding or event to come in for that, and VeraSpace. Those are the areas that they can send events and programs to. But again, for a long-term conference with a large number of hotels, we are limited on that space. And so that did cause us to change some direction in this next year, which I'll talk about. We also participated in the Dallas International Travelers Show that they had here back early this year, and distributed. These are travel organizations that are looking for places to send people when they come into the area, and so we participated in that. We have not participated in anything outside of Coppell because, quite frankly, we don't know that people are going, hey, let's go to Dallas and go to Coppell. So what we're focused on are people that are already coming here, and that this is an option for you. And we had some money left over this year. We didn't spend all the money that you guys gave us for the 22-23 year. So we had some funds left over. With that, we invested, as you'll see in front of you, we now have a brochure that are in all of the hotels. We also are giving them to the real estate companies and any other place that has a lobby or traffic that, like I said, real estate companies, title companies, anything like that, people moving into the area. It gives them an idea of everything there is to do in Coppell. There are a couple of maps in there. One is a map of the DFW area, so they can see where we are positioned. one of the things, again, moving forward is that we're positioning ourselves as we're the hub, and there's so many excursions to do outside of Coppell. Stay here because we're in the heart of the Metroplex, and you can reach everything you need to reach from us. So again, I'll talk about that a little bit more. I wanted you to see what we were able to accomplish the November 22nd through October 23 year with the funding that you gave us for that year. This is just from Belmont. This is the paid advertising, which is separate from our organic, and I'll share our organic with you in just a second. But we, as you see, we spent $107,000 during that period of time. We reached 18.7 million people that we know we were able to reach through the advertising that they do. And we had 74,000 people hit our landing pages on our website from that paid advertising that we purchased. The areas that they focused on during that period of time was mostly our general leisure. And when I say general leisure, that goes back to those photos that you saw, like our parks, our hiking trails, our restaurants, entertainment that we have here and things like that, that we promoted primarily through that advertising. We did promote our 4th of July in 23, had a great turnout on that, and our Halloween, we had great response to that, our numbers, but then it rained that day. So it did put a damper on the amount of people that came, but we did have a tremendous amount of website and traffic from that. Trying to see what else there is on that one. Now, this is from November of last year through June now, of what, again, through Belmont's advertising. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that we go dark in January, February, and March. They don't do any real advertising because they don't feel that it's a good use of our funding. And so they kick in April to actually start the advertising. Now, they did some advertising, like I said, November of last year for the Christmas, the Vintage Christmas. They did a little advertising from that. But you'll see more, it'll kick in more this year. But what you see is we've already surpassed what we did in an entire year from 22, 23. We've already made 21 million impressions on the advertising that we're doing. We've spent only, what is that, $53,000, and we've had 109 people hit our, 109,000, excuse me, hit our landing pages on our website. And so that is how they're doing that, where that's coming from. This explains through paid social, where, you know, when you're on your social media and you've got these paid ads that are popping up. Programmatic display is another means, and search. And search means like your Google search or internet search and things like that. You type in that you want what's there to do in Coppell, and then all of a sudden you start, or what's there to do in Dallas. And they have a whole big list of what you can type in, and all of a sudden you'll start getting advertising on Coppell. The search, again, is national. It's not just for the local areas. But as you see, the paid social, they focus on the 4 major counties in North Texas, which is Collin, Dallas, Denton, and Tarrant. They also have started, and this again is where we started turning a little bit on some of our advertising on supporting the hotels through search. Where now if you start saying, hey, where there's things to do in the Dallas area, you'll start getting hotel information on Coppell. So if you're planning a trip or anything like that. So that's through the search advertising that we're doing. The events that they've been promoting so far this year is the Celebrate Coppell and July 4th Parade. And they will be doing target marketing on Scare on the Square and Vintage Christmas. One thing that we did see, and I got to go back to that. Here it is. There it is. You'll see that the 2 general leisure advertisement that they've been doing. You see the little girl with the turtle. So they've been promoting nature in Coppell, the parks and things like that. And then the guy with the bicycle, they've been promoting the hiking trails and biking trails in Coppell. What they have seen in their report to us this week was that the Biodiversity Education Center, which is the little girl with the turtle, has had tremendous amount of traffic to it. And I have the numbers if you guys are interested in seeing it, versus the hiking and biking trails. So children seem to get a really big hit on our advertising. And so, oops, what happened here? Okay, I wanted to go back so that you see, this is our organic social media and our website. So you can see in 2023, at the end of October, these were the numbers that were reported to me by our webmaster about our social media. We had reached 64,000 people, and that was on Facebook, and you see the Instagram page views that we had, 202,000, and that's just people coming and looking. That is not in addition to what Belmont reports. Their numbers are tracked completely different. So this is in addition. So really you had over 300,000 people hit our web pages this past year. And our social media and our website reports run January through June, so it's not all the way back to last November. I do have those numbers, but this is just what has happened this year. We were up to 947 followers on Facebook, 740 on Instagram, and our website has had about 57,000 page views so far, just in these first 6 months. So again, we were silent in January, February, and March. So this is really just April, May, and June promotions that you're seeing this type of traffic. So we expect to see a lot more, because this was through June. So we'll have more reports for you in October when it's concluded. Now, another thing that I wanted to point out, I was hoping to have the numbers through June, but I didn't have those. This is what I think I actually put in your packet. As you see, the nature park, the biodiversity, out of the 52,000 hits that we had on our page at that point, 37,000 of them were the biodiversity, those ads for that. Because we post those on our on our social media as well, and on our website. And so we get, as you see, a lot more traffic for the little girl with the turtle than we do the guy with the bike. And then this kind of breaks it down what the rest of the traffic is for, if you have an interest in it. Just to share with you what we're looking at doing next year, anything new, really nothing new to add from what we've been doing, other than we are taking a turn with our hotel resources. We want them focusing on events that are already coming here, that they might be in Irving, they might be in Arlington, they might be in down in Dallas, but Coppell is the option for the hotels. And so they're taking that turn as well, looking for sporting events that are coming to the area, cheer competitions and things like that. Choose Coppell to stay. So they're focusing on those areas. Another and of course Belmont is as well. And then with the additional money that we had left over last year, like I said, we produced some brochures, which we're going to continue to produce, and I did not budget for them last year, so I took it out of the extra money. So this year I have budgeted for it, plus little items that we want to be able to give out at trade shows, and if we have a conference come in, the guests for the conference at the hotels would have something from Discover Coppell. And then we're also wanting to provide what we call GAP funds, group assistance programs. We had enough funds left over, or I actually had pulled it out of the funds for Belmont to provide that this past year. And what that is if the hotel can book a conference, but we need to give them some sort of deal, like $5 less off of the rooms, then the group assistance funds makes up that difference. You know, $5 a room or something like that. Or like we've had True just applied with us for an event they're doing, that they need shuttle buses. The people will stay here, but they need shuttle buses to take people back and forth to the event that they're here for. And they are still like, hey, we can cover the buses, but we've got to pay staff to manage getting these people there and back and all of that stuff for the conference. And so it was a small amount. What we allocated this past year and what we've allocated this year is $5,000 per hotel for the year. So they've got $5,000 to play with if they need all 5,000. Now, they do have to have a certain number of rooms booked, so there is a criteria. Got to have a certain number of rooms booked, and it's got to be a Coppell event going on. But, or that they've got to be eating and staying in Coppell, that we would fund their event. So they do have guidelines and all that set out for them. Those are really the only two changes that we're making to Discover Coppell this past year. And the funding, like I said, last year I had asked for funding for a contract employee. This year we're just going to stay with Hotel Resources for this year, and this is what it costs us to stay with them. We're going to continue with our webmaster, our social media, managing the program. The funds on that did increase a little bit, but we don't have facility fees or contract employee fees or anything like that we had originally budgeted for last year. Went down a little bit on what we're paying Belmont, but like I said, I had pulled some money out of what we had given them last year anyway to come up with some other stuff. The big increase, and it's not a huge increase over what we did last year, but that is to produce the brochures, maybe some sort of gift bag or something like that for people that are coming in for conferences. It won't be everybody that comes to the hotel, but if they're here for a conference and they're staying for a couple of days, then there's some little gift that we give them from Discover Coppell. And then of course for the GAP funds. Anybody have any questions?
Two questions actually, Ellie. I'm sure the analytics folks that are tracking this, they'll be able to share with you where the search is coming from. It'd be interesting to know when people are looking up Coppell, is it coming from Texas, outside of Texas? So that might help us, change our offering.
I don't know that they can tell you exactly where it's coming from, but I can find out. I've never. Have we asked them that question? I'm sorry, Daniel's here. Yeah, I don't think they can tell us exactly where it's coming from.
Most analytics companies
can. But they can tell us where we're advertising, and they can tell us based on where they're advertising in, who's clicking on it and things like that. They can tell us, there is a breakdown and there is a whole report, if you want to look at it, that they give us, where it tells us, how many are male, how many are female, and things like that. So, and we get much more traffic from female than we do male. But I do have a full report if you want to look at that. Yeah.
Sure. And the second question is, I love this program, and I know, Mike, we talked about this. We have the HOD tax, and it can only be used for certain things. So this, like the 200,000 for Ice House, I would still like to see some KPIs on. We spend that much money that actually cost.
I have the KPI, I just didn't put it up there. But yeah, I do have the KPIs. Like I said, I can send you the full report. They give us a dashboard once a month, or actually it's every couple of weeks they update it, and it has all of that on there.
And what I'm looking for, LA, is the conversion of that advertised spend into revenue for Coppell businesses or residents. So, I know we have to move forward with this, but I think we need to lean on them and say, hey, we need you to demonstrate to us that by spending this much on advertising, it's costing X dollars in incoming revenue for Coppell.
Right. And we don't, use like the word, we don't have to lean on them because they are providing that. I just didn't put that up there. Okay. I gave you the other report instead, but as you see in this report, this is a page from the dashboard. Right above what I gave you was the campaign insights. Mm-hmm. Right above that, or that right below it, says key performance indicators. So it is all right there, and it tells us exactly what they're spending per person and all of that. So I will get that to you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Bijou?
Thank you, Ellie, for the presentation. Could you share with us how much we spend on a browser?
This specific brochure, I think it was like $8 per brochure, and we had 1,000 of them printed. So yeah.
I see 74 restaurants listed here. Mm-hmm. Is that all we have?
We had whatever was in the database, and we partner that. We link with the city's database. So if the city's got it, we have it. So she pulled it directly off of what was on the data, Yeah, so as far as we know, at the time that that was printed, that's what was here.
Okay, thank you.
Jim, did you have a?
No, sir.
Okay, Don?
Apologies that I missed the number a while ago, but what is this, the current year funding? Like 375 is next year's budget, right, is
Yeah.
what you got? What was this
This past year.
Or the
I
current
have that
year's.
right in front of
The
me.
current year's budget?
Let me see. It was 358.
Okay, so 358 to 375, and the increase,
We went down on contract employee and we budgeted specifically for gap funds and funds for
20,000
brochures
20,000
and
for
things
that,
like, yeah.
brochures.
There was
Okay.
20,000 for gap and 30,000 for the brochure. And again, we had 1,000 printed and they're gone, and so we need to have more printed and all that.
Okay.
And we have funds to print it for this year. This would be for next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Kevin?
And this might be a question for staff that asked, but, so I know that the funds that we use to pay this are coming out of our hotel occupancy tax, and that's like approximately 15% of that goes to advertising?
It says it's a minimum.
Minimum, okay, so you have minimum of 15%. I just had a question about the gap funding that you're talking about. So does, if I'm getting too much on the weeds on this, but are we good issuing those types of funds, gap funding out of that advertising? Okay, that question was just asked over there. It sounds like you asked a great question, so. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that was an appropriate use.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, perfect, cool. Thank you, and thank you.
Okay. Everybody good?
Good.
All right, thank you.
Well, I thought you meant you were going to the next page.
No, I'm
You're done.
Going home.
Oh, wait a minute, yeah, wait a minute, I think I'm done.
So I did have a question.
Okay.
The other page that has the girl with the turtle, that one. So this is hypothetical. If you put the guy that was riding the bike with the turtle and put the girl on the bicycle.
Wait, is the turtle riding the bicycle?
Yeah, so I think part of it is that you got a really cute little girl there that's bringing the attention in.
Yeah.
So hey, Bob, you're not off the hook yet. As a bicyclist, why is the message not resonating with the bicycling community?
There are a lot of really great trails in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Coppell is not one of them.
Okay, that's pretty blunt. Got it.
Now, I've heard great things about our hiking trails, but again, I've never seen any actual statistics. Now, I don't know about biking, but hiking, I've heard. We've got great hiking trails.
There's one, it's not very far from here, it's in Irving.
Oh, okay.
In the road area, California crossing,
Yeah.
huge mountain bike, that's what that is.
Okay. And if you want to do, and then over at Grapevine around the lake, there's a really aggressive, very aggressive trail there.
Yeah. Now, it was, again, those were the two pictures that were selected for this particular, what we call general leisure campaign. And we have an advisory council now. Like I said, it was originally just the four people, Mindy's part of it. We have expanded that where now all the hotels participate in it, and the hotel resources participates in it. So we've got a good crowd now. I want to add restaurants to it, but it's been very helpful for us to have the hotels on board with this too.
Okay. Thank you. I didn't mean to sidetrack this.
I'm just imagining here, to me it looks like we have parents that are looking for kid-friendly activities.
And that was one of the original goals of this program, as I recall.
When we did the study on Coppell 22, it showed that our primary market were families on the go between the ages of 25 and 45. And then the secondary market, was it grandparents or was that tertiary market?
That was tertiary.
Tertiary market.
Yeah. The secondary
It
was active.
seniors.
No, just active.
Just on the go.
On the go people.
It was families on the go was number one, then active enthusiasts, someone like Daniel, that he's looking for something fun to do. anyway, I'm just teasing you, Daniel.
Okay.
But yeah, and then the tertiary was the seniors, with wanting to do things with their kids. And so I can see where the little girl got a lot more attention because that's our primary market, our families looking for something to do with their kids.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Don?
When do
You know, I have
when
one
do we
just like
discuss
this, so I.
when do we discuss the funding in a future session?
Yes,
Okay.
I couldn't tell you which one.
Okay.
We've got,
I couldn't remember where it fits.
it's
in.
one of three.
Okay, it's during the workshop.
All right, maybe you can ask the question here in just a second. Item C is a budget primer presentation, and Jessica is going to be doing this. This is to help remind us what we're fixing to go into.
I am. I'm so happy.
And hype everybody up for the event.
And he didn't even have to drink coffee. He just pumped up.
Jessica, thank you for being here.
Thank you for letting me be here. So, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I will present information to you and our viewers to prime us for our budget workshops coming up on Monday. This presentation will serve as a refresher for many in providing information for others. Our aim really is to help you grasp the basics of budgeting, why we budget, what it is, and how your role contributes to the big picture of city budgeting. Your role is really crucial in setting policy and upholding the City of Coppell's mission to provide our residents with a high quality of life, health, and safety. So today's budget primer presentation will be a bit different from other years. I will try to be a little more interactive and ask some questions to you. And we'll get started. So the first thing we have is a question. So what do you hear people say is the reason they want to live in the City of Coppell?
School district.
Good answer.
Public safety.
Yes.
Quality of life.
Quality of life. Okay. Yes.
Culture and recreation.
Yes.
Great parks.
Well, I didn't know we already had the answer. That would have been so much easier.
Well, it's all great answers, yes.
Are we really that horrible? Are we really that sad?
I feel like somebody slipped me the test before, like.
I know, I'm like, wait, how do you know the answer?
I just found it interesting, the first person that picked up the answers to read them out, so.
All right, now I'm set.
Okay.
Clearly, Public Works.
This is gonna go well. So excited.
Might take it a little longer than the presentation.
It'll be the last interactive one we have.
It may not be interactive from here on out.
Well, I think you provided all great answers. And they are very much grouped in 4 categories that you mentioned. The first category is public safety. We do have excellent police and fire departments. Our police department partners with our school districts to provide SROs. And they participate in various activities that support our chief's motto that communities keep communities safe. Besides patrolling, they provide other services. For example, they offer a vacation watch program and women's self-defense classes, amongst a host of other programs. Our fire department staffs and equips 4 fire stations with a 5th station approved for construction. The addition of the 5th station will allow the city to maintain response rates that meet the ISO 1 rating. The fire department, like our police department, offers a variety of services. For example, the department provides CPR training at LSP, where you can also receive help installing a child safety seat. So next is culture and recreation. The city offers a wide variety of culture and recreation opportunities through all the beautiful community experiences facilities, including our library, the core, the art center, the senior center, the back, and also the tennis and pickleball center. Just to name a few, then we also have 17 well-maintained picturesque parks that cover 545 acres and a slew of programs and events offered throughout the year. So another category is public works. Our public works team maintains our streets, our sidewalks, our alleyways, traffic systems, city facilities, and our fleets are well maintained. Public works also ensures our water and sewer systems are well maintained. So when you turn on the faucet, clean and safe water comes out every time. And the final category is community development. This category is where we group things that contribute to the physical development of the community. For example, the look and feel of Coppell, which includes business development, promoting a well-maintained community, and fostering a high quality of life for our citizens. So as you all shared and I categorized, people and businesses want to be in Coppell for many reasons, but all the reasons have one thing in common, and that is that city staff has established the expectation that we will provide a high level of service to our community. So all those things you said and that I categorized revolve around how the city serves. And we know we are only here and we exist to serve the community, period. So that will lead us into our next question. Ooh, I went ahead. So how does staff know what to do? What are your thoughts?
Without shooting. I mean, I would say that that's like Mike gives the direction, but Mike works with us to hear what we talk about, and I mean, it's based on 2040, citizen surveys.
Yes.
All the types of input that we do to understand what's going on in the citizens' minds. We do, our staff does an amazing job of compiling all that data, presenting it to us, and then we decide what we want to do. City manager's office and city manager, and the staff makes it happen.
That's perfect. I don't think I have to provide an answer.
Boards and commissions.
Yes, that's a good one. So yes, staff.
Drop the mic.
I'm out here.
So yes, I think you answered that. Staff knows what to do because the city manager office clearly communicates to all employees council's goals each year. Council's goals are fueled by the 2040 strategic plan. And before that, it was a 2030 plan, and before that was the 2020 plan. Coppell looks and feels the way it does because each council listened and continues to listen to the community and has used those plans, which were created with Coppell community members' input in mind to make these decisions. The community communicated what they wanted Coppell to be. City staff listened and developed budgets that aligned with the vision, and council supported through their policy decisions. So now that we have figured out how to pay, that we have figured out or established that information, we have to figure out how to pay for all these things and fund them. Things that the community has told us that make Coppell the place they want to be. And we are limited in how we can generate revenue to support the service levels the community has come to expect. This leads us into our next budgeting question. What do you believe is municipal budgeting?
It's a financial plan to make sure operations can be handled, any projects that are on the docket that either need to be done or the community desires them to be done, they fit into the plan somehow, and usually have some kind of policy document that governs how this all comes together.
Great answer.
It's same as any budgeting, it's just more complex.
This is true. Very true. Yep, and correct, that is all correct. And at a basic level, many would say it's a plan involving revenues and expenditures or goals with a price tag, but how municipal budgeting is a little more complex in terms of what we provide and deliver to our community. The city budget accomplishes the following: delivers the quality and quantity of city programs and services. It details expenditure requirements and the estimated revenue available to meet these requirements. It also connects the activities of individual city departments with the city council's strategic goals. It sets targets and provides means of measuring actual accomplishments against goals, and serves as a communication device as well that promotes the city's vision, direction, fiscal health and vitality, and what the public is getting for its tax dollars. It is ultimately a values document demonstrating good stewardship of the city's resources. So now that
Can you explain the values document one more time?
Yeah. So what I would say is a values document demonstrating good stewardship, providing in a monetary way what we value as a community. So now that I've established some of those points, I would like to cover 3 areas. The areas that I would like to cover is fund structure, budgeting, and the last topic will be property tax rate. I'll cover the property tax rate setting process and how to calculate the no new revenue rate and the voter approval tax rate. So this leads us to our next question. How are city funds organized?
As funds, different buckets.
Different buckets, that's good. Good answer. Yep. So, cities' funds are organized. And the reason I start with funds, I wanted to mention this because it's important to understand the various funds, the revenue sources, and their unique purposes before going and moving forward to the budget part. Basically, funds do segregate the monies of the city according to legal and purpose restrictions. For example, debt service fund is where we record the INS, which is the interest and sinking portion of the property tax rate, and the related principal and interest payments on debt that is recorded there. And then the tax levy is legally restricted for debt payments, and utilizing a separate fund provides transparency regarding the use of the tax levy. So each fund is a separate self-contained set of accounts, assets, liabilities, revenues, and expenditures. So the city organizes these funds, or there are different kinds of fund categories. And you may ask, what are the fund categories that we use as a city? We use governmental fund types. Generally, governmental funds are used to account for tax-supported activities or activities with legal or purpose restrictions. Coppell has 32 that fall under the governmental category. Then we have the proprietary fund types, which are used to account for activities that are similar to activities found in the private sector. Coppell has 4 funds that fall under this category. Then we have fiduciary funds, which are used to report assets held in a trust agreement or a custodial capacity for the benefit of others and cannot be used to support the city's own programs. Coppell has 2 funds that fall under that category, which is the OPED Trust Fund and also the Health Reimbursement Arrangement, which is used to account for contributions and disbursements of behalf of members of the HRA. So under the governmental fund categories are fund types. Coppell has 5 different governmental fund types. First, we have the general fund, which is the largest fund, and this is used to record the general operations and maintenance of the city. The resources of this fund determine the service levels of the city as well as general maintenance of the city. Next, we have the debt service fund. The city has 2 debt service funds, one debt service fund which is used to record the principal and interest payments on general obligation and certificate of obligation bonds that are property tax supported debt of the city. This is where we record the revenue generated from the interest and sinking portion of the tax rate, and then record the principal and interest payments on the bonds outstanding. The other debt service fund is the Coppell Recreation Development Corporation, also known as CRDC. Debt service fund, which is used to record debt issued for CRDC projects and the related sales tax needed to make the principal and interest payments on that debt. And we also have special revenue funds. These are used to record the proceeds of special revenue sources that are restricted for specific purposes. Examples can be the cemetery, the CRDC, CCPD, which is the crime control, and IMF, which is the infrastructure maintenance fund, and various other port-related funds. We also have the capital projects fund, which are used to account for capital projects, which include the acquisition and construction of facilities and infrastructure such as streets. The last government fund type is used by the city is the permanent fund. A permanent fund is used to report resources that are legally restricted to the extent that only earnings and not principal may be used to support the programs of the city. As I mentioned, the cemetery is considered a special revenue fund. However, the city places 15% of the revenue generated from the sale of plots and niches into the permanent fund. This earnings of the permanent fund will be used to maintain the cemetery once all the plots and niches have been sold.
Ramesh had a
I'm
question.
sorry.
Just a comment for the benefit of anyone watching. And the reason we have all these different funds and buckets is because the state law requires that we do that.
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Next, we have proprietary funds. So as I mentioned, Coppell uses funds to fall under the proprietary fund category. We have the enterprise fund and the internal service funds. The enterprise funds are used to account for operations where the intent of the city is that the cost of the service provided is recovered through user charges. Coppell has one enterprise fund, which is the water sewer fund. Internal service funds are used to account for goods or services provided by one fund to another fund. The city has 3 internal service funds, which is the self-funded health fund, the capital replacement fund, and the enterprise solution replacement fund. So now that we have an understanding of the city's funds, we can move on a bit to the budget process. And I do have a question. Why do we prepare a budget?
State law.
Yeah.
Residents would expect us to do that.
Yeah, that's correct. And-
our charter?
And you have to know you have to know how to set the tax rate. I mean, how much tax to levy. So,
So it's actually in our charter, but that is in the charter because it's required by state law.
Like I said, I don't think I have to answer anymore. So yeah, first of all, it is the law. It is in Local Government Code Chapter 102, requires that Coppell prepares a municipal budget each year to cover the proposed expenditures of the city for the succeeding year. In addition, the city's charter requires that the city managers prepare and submit a proposed budget to the city council. Both the Local Government Code and the charter require a public hearing on the budget and a notice of the public hearing to be published in the city's official newspaper. The Local Government Code states that at the conclusion of the public hearing, the governing body shall take action on the proposed budget. So according to the city's charter, the proposed budgeted expenditures shall not exceed the total of estimated income and unencumbered funds from previous years. Another way to say that is expenditures shall not exceed the total of estimated income plus undesignated fund balance. And that is alluding to that structural balance point there. Okay. Now we'll talk about the types of budget and planning documents. We have 2 types of budgeting and planning documents. First is the annual budget, and the second is a 5-year forecast. So the budget will cover a single year's maintenance and operations and is formally adopted by council. In addition, amendments to modify the original budget are brought to council for approval during the year. Amendments address items that arise during the year that were unknown at the time the budget was created. For example, damage caused by the freeze a few years back was something that we brought as an amendment in those years. The 5-year forecast is an internal financial planning tool that includes the current fiscal year plus 4 years in the future. This document addresses both maintenance and operations as well as long-term plans regarding improvements to infrastructure. It is updated annually and it is used internally to identify trends and address them proactively. Next, we'll discuss the phases of the budget cycle. And one thing I would like for you to keep in mind that as good stewards of the city's resources, the budget does go through various phases of vetting and prioritizing, receiving community and council input as well, and then we then incorporate that input into the budget before it actually becomes a proposed budget. So the first phase of the budget cycle is the budget preparation. This phase begins with a council retreat held in January. A budget kickoff for staff occurs at the beginning of February, which department budgets are due mid-March. Then department hearings with the city manager's office occurs in late April. Budget workshops with council begin in June with the CCPD public hearing that we just had and last month. This year, the budget workshops coming up will be in the month of July, and the first one starts in Monday, which the last one will be July 29, which is directly following the city's receipt of the certified tax roll from Dallas and Denton Central Appraisal Districts on July the 25th. The tax rate is calculated during this phase, and revenue estimates are determined. The proposed budget that will be brought forward for council's consideration of approval is developed during this phase. It is the budget developed by departments, reviewed by the city manager's office, and then presented and discussed during budget workshops with council. It is during the budget workshops that council and the public provide feedback concerning the city manager's proposed budget. At the conclusion of the budget workshop, the city manager's proposed budget becomes council's budget. The budget is required to be filed with the city secretary on or before August the 5th. The budget filed on August the 5th is council's budget, and it reflects the direction provided by council during the budget workshops. The next phase of the budget cycle is the approval, which takes place in August. As previously mentioned, public hearings are held on the budget and the tax rate. I will present more information on the tax rate a little bit later. For now, I just wanted to focus on the budget process. So this slide is showing that the budget ordinance is adopted first, and then the tax rate is adopted, and then finally the tax rate ratification. Adoption of a budget that will require raising more revenue from property taxes that in prior years requires a separate vote of the governing body to ratify the property tax increase reflected in the budget. All three of the actions shown under the budget approval are scheduled to occur on August the 27th this year. The last phase in the process is the annual audit. The audited financial statements close the fiscal year and show, among other information, a comparison of the original budget, the final budget, and the actual amount of revenues and expenditures of all city funds.
Question?
Yes.
If you can go back to the previous slide. The annual audit, so right now we are working on 2025 budget. So are you telling me in Jan 26 we'll be auditing the 25 budget? So Jan 25 will be auditing the 2025 budget?
In January of 2025, we would be auditing the fiscal year 24 budget.
Okay.
So the next slide we have here is so what you see here with the dates in red are showing that are opportunities for citizens to engage with the process, to learn about the budget process and provide input. It starts with the town hall meeting in April, which already occurred this year. Next was the public hearing in June for the CCPD, and it continues with budget workshops held in July, and then public hearing in August. The slide also shows when the proposed budget is available for public review on August the 5th this year. And we have our next question, which is, what are the city's sources of revenue?
Property tax, sales tax,
Water funds, sewer funds,
Franchise fee?
designated.
Yeah. Good answers. So first I'll start with sources of revenue for the general fund. I thought it was important to share each fund's revenue sources, as this can be confusing. For example, which funds receive property tax and which ones receive sales tax. As this slide shows, the general fund receives revenue from property taxes, sales tax, franchise fees, fines and forfeitures, and charges for services. Together, the property tax and sales tax do account for 82% of the total general fund fiscal year 2024 budgeted revenues. So as I mentioned, the property taxes and sales tax are the two largest. So I wanted to explain sales tax slightly here. So the total sales tax rate is 8.25%. The state receives 6.25% of that sales tax. The city then receives 2% of that. That 2% is broken out into 1% for the general fund, the street maintenance fund, which is the infrastructure maintenance fund. It receives a quarter of that 1%. CRDC receives half of a 1%, and CCPD receives a quarter of that 1%. The other funds represent the water sewer fund and various special revenue funds. For example, the water sewer fund receives its revenue from the water sewer rates. CRDC, CCPD, and IMF's primary source of revenue, as I mentioned, is sales tax, where the hotel occupancy tax fund receives its revenue from hotel occupancy tax received from hotels and short-term rentals. The DUD receives its revenue from stormwater fees and shown on your water bill. And the revenue source for the various court special revenue funds are from court fine set by legislation, which also dictates how the revenue from fines can be used. This next slide shows that other sources of funding come from issuance of bonds, grants, and ARPA funds Coppell received. To elaborate on the types of bonds, both GO and CO bonds are tax supported, meaning that the interest and sinking portion of the property tax rate is the rate needed to pay the P&I, the principal and interest, on these bonds. Revenue bonds have been issued by CRDC and Water Sewer Fund in the past. CRDC revenue bonds are repaid with CRDC sales tax, and water sewer revenue bonds will be repaid with water sewer revenue from water sewer rates. So the next area I would like to cover is the property taxes. I will begin with going over what is truth in taxation. First, property owners have the right, so if we can start on and begin at number 1. Property owners have the right to know about the increase in their property's appraised value. Number 2 on the right states that the city must publish its known new revenue tax rate and its voter approval tax rate before adopting an actual tax rate. Number 3 states that if the city's adopted tax rate exceeds the voter approval tax rate, the city must hold an automatic election in November. And last, the city must publish special notices and hold one public hearing before adopting a tax rate that exceeds the lower of the voter approval rate or the no new revenue tax rate. And I have another question. Who taxes properties in Coppell?
School district.
Dallas County Hospital.
Yes.
Dallas County, Denton County.
Yes.
City of Coppell.
City of Coppell.
City of
Yeah.
Coppell.
But we're the smallest part of it.
So yeah, this slide shows that other entities are included in their bill. Receiving one tax bill for all taxing entities does cause a bit of confusion. Along with the city, your tax bill includes the school district and the county. This slide shows that tax rates for other entities included in your property tax bill. So the school district makes up the largest portion of your tax bill with a tax rate of 1.053500. If you live in Denton County, the county tax rate is 0.189485. Dallas County includes the county, the hospital district, and the college district. The total tax rate for Dallas County entities is 0.5741945. The city's tax rate is 0.491818. So the total for properties in Dallas County would be 2.090564, and the total for properties in Denton County would be 1.734803. So even though all these entities show up in the same property tax bill, they are each separate legal entities that operate independently from each other and establish their own tax rates. So the county sends out the bill and receives the payments, and then sends each entity their portion of the amount collected. This is an example of governments working together to be good stewards of resources. It is more cost effective for us to come together and send out one bill rather than send out separate bills. And next question is, how does the city determine property values?
DCAT.
We don't.
That's a trick question.
DCAT does it.
Okay. It is a trick question. The appraisal district determines property values, not the city. So this slide shows that the next slide shows how the taxable value of property is determined. So we begin with the appraised value and then subtract any exemptions the property owner qualifies for, with the result being the taxable value of the property. The city council has approved 5% homestead exemption and 100,000 over 65 and disabled persons exemption. Council also approved a Freeport exemption, which is Freeport exemption is a personal property exemption for goods that are detained in the state for 175 days or less. So now that we know who determines property values and we have a high-level understanding of how taxable value of property is determined, we can move on to the property tax process and the tax rate. So here we have the property tax process. First, the appraisal district provides the certified values which are needed to calculate the tax rate. The appraisal district also sends out notices of appraised value to the property owners. Next, the tax assessor calculates the no new revenue rate and the voter approval tax rate, and the city publishes notices regarding these rates. At the first council meeting in August, the governing body votes on the maximum tax rate to propose, which will be listed in the notice of public hearing to vote on the tax rate. This is not adopting the tax rate, it is simply setting the maximum tax rate that can be proposed at the council meeting to adopt the tax rate. In August, at the same meeting, the public hearing on the budget is held. So council holds a public hearing on the tax rate. After the public hearing at this meeting, council considers approval of the ordinance setting the tax rate. And this will occur on August the 27th this year, or it's expected to occur on August the 27th. So once the tax rate is approved, the tax assessor will begin mailing out bills to each property owner, and as I mentioned, in October. So this leads to our final question.
Quick question, previous slide. August 2024, the second box, that's DCAT determining the county portion of the taxes, right? And you say tax assessor calculates tax rates. They're not calculating the city tax rate, correct?
No, so that second one is stating essentially that our tax assessor, which we designate them as a person to calculate our tax rate, they will take that the appraisal that they provide from the certified property values, and they will calculate our tax rate. And then we also have city staff that assist in double verifying the numbers as well. So we take that that calculation, and the city will publish a notice on that. I don't know if Kim, if you have anything to add to that.
So, we contract with Dallas County to calculate, to collect our taxes, and he also calculates our tax rate. So the county is separate from Dallas Central Appraisal District.
Okay.
I think maybe that's what I'm hearing. So the Central Appraisal District provides the values, and the county sends out the bills, and then we send our payments to the county, and they also help us calculate our tax rate.
Here, the second box, where you say tax assessor, who is that?
The tax assessor is
John Ames.
John Ames, who of Dallas County.
Yeah.
And John Ames in Dallas County and that organization, are they calculating all 3 or 4 components of the taxes?
If the other entities contract with the county, they are.
Okay.
I can tell you that the school district does contract with the county also to collect their
And
taxes.
so does Coppell City.
And we do, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I did not know that. Thank you.
So our next question is, what is the current property tax rate? Another trick question. I mentioned it earlier.
49.2.
It's a combination of
49.2.
combination of many things.
Yes. So I've provided an overview of the property tax process. Now I would like to go over how the tax rate is calculated. So the top row of the buttons on this slide shows that the total tax rate is comprised of the M&O rate, which is 0.421666, plus the interest and sinking rate, which is going to be 0.070152. This represents revenue for the general fund, and the INS, an interest sinking portion, which is designated by purple button, represents the revenue for the debt service fund. The total tax rate is the combination of the M&O and the interest and sinking, giving us a total of 0.491818, as you can see in the red button. The second row of buttons on this slide shows the formula used to calculate the total property tax revenue to be received by the city. It starts with the tax rate, designated by the red button, and calculated in the first row, and it multiplies that by a taxable value provided by the appraisal districts, which is then divided by 100, since the tax rate is per 100 value, with the result of the equation being the total property tax revenue the city will receive. Remember, a portion of the total tax revenue goes to the general fund, and a portion will go to the debt service fund. Also keep in mind that the tax bill you receive represents property paid to not only the city, but also the school district, the county, and so you receive one bill that is then allocated to 3 different entities. This slide shows the simplified calculation of the known new revenue rate. Remember back in the truth in taxation slide, I talked about legal requirements surrounding the calculation of the known new revenue and the voter approval rate. This part provides you the first calculation. So the actual known new revenue rate is 3 long pages, so this is the simplified version. So we are showing you here that we use the prior year M&O tax revenue represented by the first green circle. And we divide that by the current value of property that was taxed in the prior year. That amount is then multiplied by 100 because of the tax rate is per 100 of value. The result is the M&O portion of the known new revenue rate. The M&O portion of the known new revenue rate is then added to the interest and sinking rate to obtain the total known new revenue rate. Again, the INS rate, which is interest and sinking, is the rate necessary to generate revenue equal to the principal and interest payments on the debt. And now I have a slide that shows you a tool to help you understand that if property values increase, the known new revenue rate will decrease. If property values decrease, the no new revenue will increase. If there's no change to the property values, the no new revenue rate will remain the same. It will not change. And lastly, we have the voter approval tax rate. So I will go over the calculation used to determine the voter approval tax rate. And again, this slide shows the simplified version. It's also a three-page calculation showing the review of various adjustments to both the no new revenue rate and the voter approval rates. If you would like to see the actual tax rate calculation, it can be found in our budget book in the last several pages of the document. As you can see, the voter approval rate starts with the no new revenue and maintenance and operation rate that we calculated before, and it increased that by 3.5%. It then adds the INS and the debt rate and any unused increment with previous years to determine the total voter approval rate. This rate is the rate that would trigger an election on the tax rate.
Can you just explain one more time what an unused increment is?
So the unused increment is going to be the difference between the tax rate that the city sets, which is the actual tax rate, compared to the voter approval rate. That difference, so that can be utilized for a total of a sum of 3 years, and that could be added to our actual tax rate in the sum of that.
For my understanding, I'm going to rephrase that. So last year, if we were allowed to go up to 3.49 and we went only to 2.49, so we had that 1 point that we could then tag on to this year.
Correct. That's correct.
To make the voter approval rate higher so that...
You basically get credit if you come in below that 3.5% each year, but you can only use 3 years of that.
Okay.
So it's a credit kind of.
Thank you.
So this final slide is just leaving you with some resources that we have available to you. And we have the annual operating budget for fiscal year 24, our budget in brief, our 5-year forecast for years 24 to 28, our annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year 23. And you can see all these resources in our website, which is www.coppelltx.gov. You can also visit our transparency page within that website and our strategic financial engagement department page. And that concludes my presentation. At this time, I'll be happy to take any questions that you have.
Don?
I have a quick question. This is more logistics, but when we calculate the no new revenue tax rates or voter approval rate or any of those, so staff, we calculate them, but does somebody else certify them for us? Does the state certify them, or do they just take our word for it, or what? How does that happen? How does that work?
We contract the entity they will calculate the rate for us, but we, in addition to the entity, we also calculate it as well, just to verify both numbers.
So there's somebody confirming, coming behind us.
So John Ames is a certified tax assessor collector, so he is certified by the state to be able to calculate our taxes, our tax rate.
And I'm assuming.
And we have somebody on staff who's also certified by the state.
Oh, okay. So we have somebody on staff that can the person on staff certify our tax rate?
She could.
Okay.
She could.
Even though it's somebody internal?
But because he does our tax, he does the assessing and collecting, he does the whole thing, and we verify.
Okay, so we can have discussion when we have discrepancy between our calculation and his calculation, to make sure everybody's in agreement.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Now, is the 5-year forecast, is that also required by ordinance or state law, or is that just something that we do?
It's not required, it's just something that we do annually, just again to identify trends and just react to them proactively instead of reacting as 1 year. So we do, our 5-year forecast is composed of 5 years. So we will meet, it's a whole process within the city, it's a large process that we have, and just again to identify trends and address them proactively, but it's not required.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
How many more times will we be seeing you this next month?
Many.
All the time.
Yes.
That was very well done.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, moving on, what are we, D, is a discussion regarding donation bins, and Mary is going to present this. This is something that kind of hit me by surprise, but we have had a proliferation of donation bins in town. And our businesses are starting to ask us to do something about it, to complain. And so this presentation, Mary will explain a little bit more, but it's to give you some background on what's going on with these things. And the funny thing was, I was at the shopping center across from where I live, and I don't know, there used to be 2 bins there, and I think there were about 8 or 10 now. And it has gotten crazy. So Mary?
Well, thank you for that introduction, Mayor, Council. So now I'm going to go through a few slides talking about donation bins. I'll probably use the term donation bin, box, receptacle interchangeably. So there we go. Oh, sorry. Jumped the gun.
That's across from my house.
So the number of bins has been steadily increasing around town over the last year or so, and staff is basically proactively proposing the creation of an ordinance to regulate this proliferation, to prevent visual clutter, potential parking issues, and any all nuisances associated with unattended bins. So staff would like to discuss the issue and potentially a future ordinance to regulate the number, type, maintenance, and location of the bins, if you so choose to do so. So we can't outlaw them, but we can regulate them.
Mary, quick question.
Sure.
The folks that put the bin out, do they need to get permission from anybody to be in that business?
So, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about through this presentation,
Right.
is that a lot of times they just drop them off. Like the property owner doesn't even know that they're there.
My question is, are they even allowed to collect the donation?
So right now, we don't have anything that speaks to this directly.
Okay.
So this is why we're kind of discussing it, because right now we tell them they can't really do it, but it happens anyway. And so we're trying to get ahead of it so that we have regulations in place to at least say, yes, you can, but you have to follow these regulations in order to do so. So this first image that you're looking at is an aerial view of a...
Brianna's got her hand up, Mayor.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, Brianna, did you want to say something?
I did. Can we go to that comment so I cannot hear anything?
Wait.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Going back to that comment of we want to have like some sort of regulations in place on what they can and can't do, like, I guess I'm confused, like, who's putting them there, and if they're not supposed to be there, why can't we just remove them? Like, why can't we just, and I don't know where that falls, but, I guess I'm trying to figure out, do we even want to have any regulations around having them or not having them? Why not just remove them if they shouldn't even be there? That's a business's property, right?
Yeah, there's a legal answer to that. Let Mary finish and we'll talk about that later.
Okay, cool, thank you.
All right, so this first image that we're looking at, it's an aerial view of Woodside Village Shopping Center. You may know it as where Sprouts, Urban Air, and Amia's are located. So this is actually comprised of multiple lots. There's about 5 lots we take in the Andes and the 7-Eleven corner. This next image is a recent photo of the parking lot along Sandy Lake Road of that same shopping center. So I remember, there was probably like 1 or 2 bins. This, more recently, like, there's 10 now in the shopping center. And it's all up against Sandy Lake Road.
It's so convenient to put your mail in that little mailbox.
Even the post office.
That started it all.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Ben.
And so here we can see that, at some point they can start overflowing and end up being a place for trash drop-off. This next image is of Denton Tap on 121 behind Roses and Hat Creek Burger. So that first image, there was like 2 bins, probably like a couple years ago, according to Google Earth. Now there's about, I think, 5 or 7 back there now. So the number of bins has been increasing steadily. Most of the bins are being placed in locations that have high visibility along the city's thoroughfares, but bins are now being placed in parking lots for schools and churches as well. So while charitable donation bins can serve a great purpose, staff is proposing to stay ahead of these potential code issues by implementing some regulations that make sure that the bins are managed and well maintained. We would like to propose adopting regulations through an ordinance if City Council would like to implement regulations. These would apply to all existing and future bins. So this is not part of the zoning ordinance, but a regulatory item, therefore there's no legal non-conforming issues in terms of if the bins that are already there, they're not grandfathered in. So we're looking at having code compliance, go around, and we've kind of already done a little bit of a survey. So if we adopt some regulations, we're looking at maybe 30 days to give them notice. They would have 30 days to get a permit, otherwise they would have to remove them from the property. I would send a notice to the property owner. If that wasn't complied with, then we could possibly have the city remove it and have the property owner or the receptacle owner pay for that.
Just a quick question. When you say 30 days for them to get a permit or move from the property, are you proposing or suggesting the person that owns the donation bin or the property owner?
So, and that's part of the issue, is that some of the property owners don't even know that they're there.
Well, that's what I was just trying to understand, kind of what you were proposing is who would be responsible for getting the permit?
So what would happen, and we're going to kind of get into that,
Oh.
what we're looking at is, you have to get permission from the property owner.
Mm-hmm.
And then if the property owner signs off, then you can apply for the permit.
Got it. Thank you.
So we're looking at, what kind of zoning would we potentially allow this in? So we're looking at some of the commercial zonings, so like commercial C, retail R, highway commercial, and light industrial. So it doesn't include all of the commercial zonings, like it doesn't include, it's up to you, right? But we're not including office or town center or the historic district for this presentation purposes, but obviously nothing was written in stone, so whatever you wanted to do. We would also require a permit and a decal be placed on the bin so that we know that they've gone through that permit process. Now this brings up a question, because we're looking at what kind of commercial zoning we'd like to do it in. Would you also want to allow it for churches and school properties? And I ask that because a lot of those facilities are not zoned commercial. They have single-family residential zoning behind that. So we could make exceptions for churches or schools if you so chose to. Yes, I know. Because they're allowed in any type of zoning. So you could have them in commercial, you could have them in residential zonings, churches and schools.
At one time, they talk about Mary, the schools had recycling for paper and magazines. The elementary schools did as a way to raise money. So we have some historical background. The school has allowed some kind of bin drop recycling. Because this is just recycling for personal property at the end of the day. So.
Well, but the school would still have the ability to sign off on the permit, so they'd be able to regulate it.
But why would we include schools is because they have, at one time, they had magazines and paper receptacles in the school for them to raise money. So they've had a hand to play in recycling.
Ramesh?
Maybe I'm jumping the gun here. I'm making the assumption that most of these bins are businesses or institutions that are outside of Coppell. Rather than going through all of this process, if we just let them know that, hey, we are getting ready to pass something, it would be best if you remove it in 10 days. And where I'm going with that is, by passing an ordinance, We might be preventing someone who lives in Coppell, let's say they have a tragedy and they're collecting donations. We don't want them to go through this process of taking permission from the city. So why limit our residents, I mean, why make them jump through hoops if we can tell this out of city folks too?
I guess I'm not quite understanding your question.
So this would only apply to commercial boxes or boxes. So when someone takes personal donations, that's typically not done through a collection box.
Yeah, these are unintended
Right.
donation box or receptacles.
So what are you thinking of?
I was thinking that if you just tell them we're going to pass an ordinance, if you don't clean up your act, take your stuff and leave in 10 days, maybe they'll do it. And if they don't, then why pass an ordinance and create another legal process when we don't have to?
I'll answer that question when
Yes,
she's
sir.
done.
Brianna's hands up.
I'm sorry, Brianna, you're on mute.
I know, thank you, Kevin, for watching that, thanks, Mayor, but, sorry, Bob, will you answer that question? Were you going to say you were going to answer that question? I didn't want to interrupt that.
Yeah, I just don't want to interrupt her presentation, but if you want me to answer it now, I will.
No, Brianna, he said he'd answer it later.
Here's two questions, I guess, also from the ordinance standpoint, are we seeing, like, are other cities, by any chance, do you know if they're seeing something similar as this, like,
Yes.
is this?
Yes. No, this is not restricted to you. I have a number of cities I've already written to donation box ordinances.
Okay. I was trying to also find out, like, are we only seeing this here in neighboring cities? Could we leverage, like you said, ordinance language from other cities?
Right.
And what could we use from that perspective? The other thing too, I was just gonna make a comment on this was, I'm also creating some regulations, because otherwise we could end up in a situation where, like, our entire parking lots, right, are all full of these bins. I'm all for giving donations, and I want to make sure that that's clear, but I think we should be mindful of how many are on there, that they have been permitted, and that we also are putting some responsibility on the organization to come and empty out those receptacles on a regular basis. Because if we have a lot of them, right, it could just be a complete overload, we have trash issues or anything else. But I think the other thing I was gonna ask about was, in your proposal, you talked about, like, the city either, we have the permit, and then if not, we remove them. Part of that too, what I'm concerned with is, like, manpower behind this. Like, I feel like our code compliance team is overloaded. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I just want to be mindful, especially being in the budget process, do we need to potentially hire and/or figure out how we account for that? So that's just my comment.
As soon as Mary is able to go through the presentation, a lot of the questions are going to get answered. And Bob has also said multiple times he'll answer questions.
So let's let Mary continue on, because I think that they've already got most of these. For example, the permit requirements are on the screen right now. So you want to go through, continue
Yes,
on?
Yes, sir. All right, so, I did send a survey out to other cities to say, hey, do you have some kind of donation box ordinances? A lot of them replied back to me if they did, so we are taking a look at it. We have looked into it. What I'm here for today is to see if you want us to go further into it. So a lot of what we're looking at here has been gleaned from other ordinances that other cities have adopted. So some of the permit requirements that we're looking at, the permit holder must be a nonprofit corporation registered in Texas, that we have the contact info for the operator of the box. that we have an address for the official notices to be sent to. We have written authorization from the landowner of the receptacle to be there. That we have an agreement for weekly pickup of donated materials. You know, that no more than one or however many we want donation receptacles per lot or development. So like we were looking at the Woodside Village, that's really one development. We could limit that to one bin instead of the 10 that are on there right now. Or if you wanted to say per lot, then you'd only have 5. But a lot of the ordinances that we looked at, they limited to like one bin. Maximum size of 50 square feet, that all the donations need to fit inside the receptacle, that the permit holder information be clearly visible to the public, and that the receptacle be constructed of metal or weather-resistant materials. We want, for that permit application, a site plan showing where on the property they looking to locate it, that they are not occupying any required parking or landscaped areas, that they're not located in front of buildings, but they're located at the rear of the site. We want elevations of the receptacle, make sure that there's a locking mechanism so that people can't get into it. Information on both the owner of the box and the recipients and beneficiaries. Written consent of the property owner to place the bin there, and a detailed maintenance and collection schedule. So in terms of maintenance and upkeep, I guess one of the questions is, do we want to require the screening of these bins? Just like we do for dumpsters, we require a screening around it. Obviously, all the ones that we've seen over here, they're just placed on the ground and we're good to go. We want to make sure that if we have any, that they're in good working order, not rusty, faded, or in disrepair. We want to be mindful of when the service hours to come and collect the goods. So 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekends. Make sure that they are emptied weekly, and that the collection of, it only has collection of clothing and household goods. And what I mean by that is clothes, shoes, purses, toys. It has to be able to fit in the bin, so you can't bring furniture and just leave it outside. So with that, we are looking for some kind of direction. If you would like to move forward with some type of ordinance, we'll be looking towards coming back with an ordinance and looking at doing some more research for what other cities are doing, and obviously with your guidance of how many, if you want that, how many bins do you want, etc. That's the end of my presentation, but Bob is going to answer your some of your questions.
Legal questions.
Legal questions.
Mayor and Council, there's been a couple of questions on why we have to even allow these things and what can the property owner do. It is true that all these donation bins have been placed on private property, but they're in public areas. And our wonderful court, the judges, have, in, I guess 2014 was the first case, and it was the city of St. John's, which I'm personally familiar with since it's a suburb of where I grew up. And they passed a ban on donation boxes, and they challenged that ban and it was primarily for nonprofit and church-related activities. And in that case, the receptacle company made the argument to actually it was a federal case, to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals in Cincinnati, and said, this is a First Amendment issue. Our donation boxes speak to our mission of helping people that are less fortunate than us, and now it became a First Amendment issue, and they got the court to agree with them. And now there is a litany of U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals opinions that have adopted that the donation box is taught. So they're treated much as people that would solicit for a charitable purpose in a public place, and therefore That's why they're allowed. I don't know that I agree with that, but that appears on a number of circuits. There is a case now that has been, there's a writ of certiorari that has been submitted to the Supreme Court of the United States to talk about this First Amendment issue. The Ninth Circuit, which is probably has a reputation as being the craziest circuit in the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals system, has adopted this. In that case, that's the one that's pending for the writ of certiorari is from California and the city of Oakland. They upheld, the Ninth Circuit actually upheld the regulations. And so many of the things that we're talking about here have been approved and have come through that court system and have been checked off as appropriate regulations. The distance requirement. One of the arguments they're making in the California case is the fee was too high. So we got to be careful about how much we can charge. The distance requirement is being attacked in the Oakland case. In Oakland, they had to be at least 1,000 feet apart. There's some things that we can do that may be at risk, and I jokingly mentioned to Mike that we could have a donation farm, that they have to be placed in a particular area of town and have them over there instead of scattered all over town, as long as everyone's given an opportunity, maybe in a more non-visual commercial or industrial area. So there's a lot of things that we are going to try to do, but there has been a proliferation. I have written 2 ordinances. They've yet to be challenged and everyone's complied. You know, another thing we did is you can't paint them bright pink and fuchsia and lime green and that kind of thing, so they become eyesore from that standpoint. I'm happy to answer any question. So now the donation box is a First Amendment issue. They get treated like people that are out soliciting or promoting an Elam Masonry or a charitable event, like they were on the sidewalk. And you can disagree with that, and I do, but I don't see how a box can talk, but apparently the court said it can.
Right. Jim?
So, am I correct to presume, Bob, that if the landowner refuses permission for someone to put the box on their private property, that First Amendment right doesn't apply?
I think that that's correct.
Okay. And so...
Because it is private property after all.
Right.
But if it's a place, you get into that argument, and you'll see that places of public accommodation or places open that are semi-public, like parking lot, now you get a different, you know, if someone's in that parking lot protesting, as long as they're not interrupting traffic, they have a First Amendment right because it's a place of public access. And I think they can make that argument pretty easily with a parking lot.
Are you aware of any limitations legally on the requirements we could impose on the landowner with respect to anything that they allow on their private property?
That the landowners were where the bans came from. That the landowner, that they prohibited and the landowner couldn't allow it. And so it was a zoning issue. Mm-hmm. And St. John's, it was a zoning, they were zoned out of existence. Of course, said that's too restrictive because that's First Amendment. That's like zoning out First Amendment right. So the ban itself looks like it's not going to pass constitutional.
But short of a ban, imposing requirements on the landowner, for example, requiring that the landowner either provide insurance for the bin and its value and the estimated value of its contents, or they require proof of insurance from the person placing the bin in the parking lot, that they have adequate insurance for the value of the bin and its estimated contents.
It's so restrictive that it has a chilling effect, you got that problem.
Just requiring insurance?
No, the more, but it's, you know, it becomes dogpile. How many regulations can you get away with putting on the owner and the receptacle owner where it becomes so burdensome that it has a chilling effect? That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
So we can there may be a smorgasbord of regulations, and I think you get to give me your 7 best, and I may not be able to put all 25 on there. Because if you do, then they'll say that it's so restrictive that no one can comply, then it is in effect a ban.
Can we treat them, I mean, I know that when we zone like a new building, our zoning, our parking lot requirement requires a certain number of spaces per square footage of the building. So, and I take it, Mary, that your reference to that it can impair required spaces is referring to that aspect of the zoning process?
Right, when you have, especially if you have a smaller lot, every space is critical, right? So if you require 10 spaces and now you're taking up 2 with bins, you really can't have a certain type of business.
Like Braidwood, for example, is a smaller strip center. You know, depending on what the uses are in there, it's more restricted than, say, you know, Sprouts, because it is such a big parking lot. They've got more spaces available, where a smaller development would have less spaces. If you went down where the Coppell embroidering is, and down there, that's a very small, I think there's a vape shop down there. You put a bin in there, they may not have enough parking at all.
So who would be the responsible party? That'd be the landowner, right?
Yeah.
Because they would give consent to the bin, and then they would be impairing their own zoning conformity.
Yeah, and one of the things that we talked about, a lot of these bins are just being dropped in. If you go back to the picture that Mary had of Sprouts, that's one company. Mm-hmm. So a lot of charitable organizations hire someone to put the bins out for them, and this one's for Bob's charity, and this one's for Jim's charity, and this one's for Kevin's charity. But it's one company dumping all those bins out there. Mm-hmm. See, all those are from the same company, all those white ones. They have the same logo on them. They may have different recipients or beneficiaries. And that is really the problem that is systemic, at least in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, is there's a number of bins, a number of properties. And if we had, one of my other cities has vacant properties, and they got a ton of them, and the property owners in California. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to clean up there by restricting the number on those lots is the absentee owner. Now the city's responsible for removing them, because that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, and then, I mean, also the potential for fire hazards, things, hazardous substances. I mean, I would refer to these things personally as mini dumpsters. I mean, I don't think they're really.
There's no one, you're right.
I mean, we've got CCA, we've got Goodwill, we've got MetroCrest, we've got all these wonderful established organizations that would love to receive genuine donations of clothing, shoes, that sort of thing. And so I presume that, you know, these things are more likely at least to be the recipient of something that would be a fire hazard, a hazardous substance, something that we wouldn't want.
If I wanted to get rid of my whiskey bottle, I'd just stick it in there instead of go home with it.
Well, or an old battery, or, you know, anything that we were talking about with respect to like hazardous waste that gets picked up here in town. So
we're coming up on the bottom of the hour, and Kevin's got a question.
Just had 2 quick questions. The first one, Mary, you referenced some sort of like screening or containment area similar to the dumpsters that we require. Is that what you were talking about? Like,
right, exactly.
Right.
So, and that's a question, right? Because some cities require it, some cities don't. It's just something to consider that if we move in that direction, would you want it to be screened?
okay, 'cause I imagine that would be very cost prohibitive to, you know, build a structure around to screen it. So just, I want to make sure I understood what that point was. And the second one on there, and I didn't get all the details on the first one. All these companies here, like, do we know if they're nonprofits or are they for-profit companies that are hiring these things? Like,
There's both.
There's both.
And so, like, was there a use limitation in the permit to nonprofits?
Yeah. Now, that was a point of attack in one of these, and the court talked about a profit for nonprofit, and is that really fair? But that's really what there's not any for-profit recycling bins.
So I wanted to make sure that I saw that point on there. So I just want to make sure, because I was just curious if we know if they are for-profit or nonprofit companies right now that are using it.
Mayor, how do you guys feel? Do you want us to give you something to start working on and looking at, and then we'll come back and do a workshop and say, I like this one, I don't like this one, or is Mr. Hager right, as many of the restrictions you can get away with, or whatever it is you want to do, and give you something to look at instead of just kind of...
I want to ban it, and if I can't do that, I want to effectively ban it.
He said with a wink and an eye.
I was winking and nodding for the record.
I've got thumbs up from everybody but Kevin and Don.
Yeah, I'm in favor of seeing something.
Let's take a look at something.
Let's go
I'd like to
forward.
do that.
You've got, yes, we will move forward.
It looks like we don't have.
And the thing I heard was I didn't know about the First Amendment thing.
Well, it's
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all right.
The Ninth Circuit's getting better.
Thank you very much.
Some of the others are getting worse.
I know, yeah, that's all right.
All right, the time is 7:26. We're at the end of work session, and we will move into council chambers for a regular session at 7:30.
Great job, Mary.
Make sure your mic's on when you say that.
Remember Big Daddy Johnny Garland?
Good afternoon, everybody. The time is 7:31 p.m. We're here for the Coppell regular session of the Coppell City Council. We do have a quorum, so we're going to move forward. Just as a reminder, any persons wishing to speak during our citizens' appearance or the work sessions must sign the appropriate register located outside the council chambers and list your residence address. Just as a note, and I must apologize to Councilmember Matthew, who I slided last time, we do have one of our council members operating remotely, Councilmember Brianna Hinojosa Smith. So she's up on the screen, and hopefully we will not ignore her when she waves at us. So thank you very much. And Bijou, I'm sorry I forgot to make that announcement when you were remote too. So tonight we have Wadud Hussein, with our Interfaith Allies Association to give our invocation, and then we'll follow that up with the Pledge of Allegiance. So please rise.
Good evening, City Council. I come here on behalf of the City of Coppell Allies and Community Interfaith Group, and also many other Coppellians, and also our Islamic Center of Coppell. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. All praise is to God, the creator of heavens and earth, Lord of Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad. Messengers who are sent with compassion and justice for all. God, our sustainer, master of this life and the next eternal life. You alone we worship, and you alone we seek help. Guide us along the straight path, the path of those who have been blessed. God, creators of every precious human being, diversity, ethnicity, culture, language, so that we may get to see the wonders of your greatness and majesty in each other. Grant us unity of heart for your service, and the service of each and every creation without bias. Facilitate our affairs with deep guidance away from ego and lower self. Allow us to rise to our best self. Our Lord, bless us, our families, and our community. Guide and empower our elected and city officials to make decisions that maintain the sacred institutions of family and community. Guide us to maintain the harmony and sense of inclusion in our beautiful city. Remove from our hearts any ills towards others. Help us focus on our commonalities while appreciating our diversity. Help us set good examples for our children by supporting what is right and by standing up united against what is wrong. Inspire us to face adversity with humility and courage while swiftly addressing them. Help us maintain the integrity and good reputation of our city while continually self-improving. Finally, our Lord, and as we represent in this chamber, we ask you to reward those that volunteer their time and their effort to be of service to others. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Our Lord, accept from us, indeed, you're all-hearing, all-knowing. Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, item number 5 is a proclamation, and I'd like to invite Megan Wolf and members of the Community Experiences team to come forward. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming down. I wasn't sure how many we were going to get to come forward. So, hear this. Whereas parks and recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including Coppell, and whereas our parks and recreation amenities are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all of our citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of a community and region, And whereas parks and recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas parks and recreation areas are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community, and whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Park and Recreation Month, and now therefore I, Wes Mays, Mayor of the City of Coppell, do proclaim the month of July as Park and Recreation Month in the City of Coppell, and I encourage all citizens to celebrate by getting involved in outdoor activities, connecting with nature, visiting one of Coppell's many parks or recreational facilities, and creating memories with family and friends. In witness thereof, I've set my hand and caused the seal of Coppell to be affixed this 9th day of July, 2024. So thank you very much. I believe Councilmember Walker had something he wanted to say.
Yeah, I just really want to thank all of you for such a wonderful effort you make every year. You know, our Community Experiences group is really, I think, a huge part of kind of the heart and soul of our community, because y'all just provide so many wonderful experiences. I mean, everything from the summer classes and, you know, our park system, you know, the different events that we have. They're just always just so well done and so fun, and provide such a wonderful vehicle for our families to enhance the quality of their lives. And I just, you know, really want to appreciate y'all and thank you very much for that.
Councilmember Prem Kumar.
Thank you, Mayor. The Parks and Rec team, you all do an amazing job. Way back in 2008, when I was thinking about moving to Coppell, the schools was the bait, but you all reeled it in. As soon as I saw the parks, I believe Parks and Rec is the one amenity that my family and I use the most. And the Independence Day celebrations, you all did an amazing job. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Brianna Hinojosa-Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say thank you, and I don't even feel like that's enough, but to each and every one of you, you guys go above and beyond every single time. You do a phenomenal job. You do it with a smile on your face. You can see the passion in what you do in the way that each and every one of our events is executed. And you know, we're on the receiving end of citizens saying wow and thank you, but you guys are the ones that are at the core of making everything happen and every detail executed phenomenally. So so thank you truly for all that you do for our community, and thank you for your time, your effort, and your commitment. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilmember Carroll.
Thank you, Mayor. In particular, recent events that I want to talk about. Miss Wolf, Miss Wolf down there? Yes. I wanted to say thank you to Miss Wolf in particular for the Celebrate Coppell. I'm sorry? It's on. Okay. I got the green light. For Celebrate Coppell and the parade and all the events of recent days. I thought they were fabulous. I've heard nothing but great things from citizens around town. So thank you very much, Ms. Wolf, for putting that together. And I know that is, I would say it's our largest event. Is that fair to say that's our largest event that we put on every year? And so you and the broader team did a phenomenal job with these recent days.
Let's give them a round of applause for this. So Megan, maybe you can bring us up to date a little bit. You guys have had, I know it was an entire city of event, but you guys were kind of at the center of Party in the Park and our 4th of July Independence Day parade. So maybe you can kind of give us a little update on, the big question was how many drones were there? And I'd kind of like to know how many people showed up. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. So the drones, we had 200 drones. So that was, if you did attend the holiday parade and tree lighting, that one was 100 drones. So we stepped that up a little bit for Celebrate. And then we estimated during peak time, and this was, of course, during the drone show and the concert and the fireworks, about 15,000 people. Yes. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Mayor and Council, and thank you for all of the really kind words and the support. We so look forward to this month with just all of the summertime activities we have throughout the department, as well as for Parks and Recreation Month. I'm not sure if you have had a chance to take a look at our social media, or maybe you've already voted a little bit, but we are going to be having a, it's called Sweets 16 bracket, where the community can vote for their favorite ice cream treats. And then the overall winner will be passed out on Thursday, July 25th. As kind of just a celebration for Parks and Recreation Month and everything, and it's ice cream, and who doesn't love ice cream in the summer? So just keep an eye out on the Coppell Community Experiences social media page for a time and location for that, as well as just keeping up with our summertime activities.
Thank you very much, and here is your proclamation. So thank you very much. Oh, congratulations. Thank you very much. Okay, item number 6 is a citizen's appearance. Persons wishing to speak must sign the register and list your address. Presentations by individuals shall be limited to 2 minutes each. An individual speaker's time may be extended for an additional 2 minutes with the approval of the majority of the council members present. Persons signed up to speak will be called in the order they signed up. No personal attacks by any speakers shall be made against any member of the council, the mayor, individual group, or corporation. There will be no comments or deliberation from the City Council due to the Texas Open Meetings Records Act. Once the timer sounds at 2 minutes, the City Secretary or Mayor will cut in and make the request to the City Council if they would like to extend the speaker's time. We did have one person signed up to speak tonight, and that's Mr. Thomas Burrows. Mr. Burrows?
Thomas Burrows, 138 Win Page. I do want to make mention that, Mayor, you sent pictures of your granddaughter, but you didn't tell us what her name was. So, you know.
That was, and I apologize for that, that was on Facebook, and that was done on purpose.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess we'll just be the unknown granddaughter of Mayor Wes Mays. We have an extremely large number of streetlights on East Sandy Lake and East Beltline that are not working, and unfortunately Encore has limited the number of lights that you can go out there and say aren't working. So after you do 3 or 4, they won't let you turn them in anymore. So in the past, when I would turn in 20 or 30, I can't do that anymore. Maybe somebody that works for the police department or the city might also help me out on that. We have a large number of unused power poles on Denton Taup and South Beltline. Grass south of Dividend on South Beltline that is 6 or 7 feet high. That's been turned in since November of 2023. Bridges on Denton Taup, they have street lights that are covered up by trees. You know, it's kind of hard to see them. Area on Frontage Road south of 121, right before MacArthur, i.e. Firestone there, the grass is 7 feet high. And so the area next to the mayor's house, which there is an area there that has lots of dead limbs and stuff like that. So, you know, if we have a fire and it gets out of control, I hope you have everything, all your pictures copied, Mayor, and at another location, because your house might go down, because you're one of the 3 houses that's closest to this area. The area next to Chase Bank South has a dead tree and many limbs and high grass. Dead trees in the median on South Beltline. I mean, if they're dead, they could at least be cut down so they don't fall on somebody. The area next to Chase North on Denton Tap, the mowing crews only do the front half of it. I don't guess they don't think anybody looks at the front.
Mr. Burrows, your 2 minutes are up. Is there any desire to extend? Ramesh? Mr. Burrows, I'm sorry, your time is up. Thank you very much for your comments tonight.
So I guess if I was somebody else, you would have let me have 2 more minutes. But I'll be back next time. I'll leave the rest of my issues with you, Mayor, because I think you might find them interesting.
If you will give them to the city secretary, she can make copies for all of us. Thank you.
It's interesting when people don't want to listen to the citizens.
Item number 7 is our consent agenda. Consent agenda items are routine in nature and are generally enacted in a single motion. They have been subject to previous council actions or reviews, and any item may be pulled from the agenda by a member of the council and considered separately. We will be considering item 7C separately. Councilors, are there any questions on any of the consent agenda items? Councilmember Nevels, Mayor Pro Tem Nevels.
Agreed. All right. Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve consent agenda items A, B, and D through F.
Thank you. Do I have a second from Councilmember Walker? All in favor?
Walker, Hinojosa Smith, Carol Nevels, Prem Kumar, Matthew in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Okay, item C is consider approval of an ordinance of the City of Coppell amending Chapter 3, Section 3-1-12 of the Code of Ordinances by amending the daily water conservation and drought contingency plan and authorizing the mayor to sign. Mr. Garza.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Yes, this year, every 5 years, we're required to update the water conservation and drought contingency plan, and so that's what's before you tonight, so I'd be happy to answer any questions related to that.
Councilmember Walker.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Garza. So my concern that, first I wanted to ask, you've indicated during work session, are we adopting what is effectively in place at every other city within DWU?
Dallas Water customers, yes, sir.
Okay, and we're the last city?
Not the last, there's a couple others that are not 2-day watering. I don't know which ones off the top of my head, but
No,
there are a couple
enough.
of smaller cities too.
Okay. And I know the 18 is 18.5 million daily limit on gallons.
That's correct.
That we keep bumping into.
That's correct.
As we grow, as we add, we have yet another neighborhood coming on, on Sandy Lake over there, and some new construction in every little pocket of land that people can find, which is wonderful on the one hand, but is there going to come a point where just normal usage would exceed that 18.5 million? Just by virtue of the larger scale of development that we've experienced?
Correct. We do have a projection that we are required to submit to Dallas Water every year. And as of right now, our max build out, we anticipate to be 25 MGD in 2040, I believe. And so what we're doing today is trying to begin practices that can reduce that amount, so maybe we don't have to get to the 25 MGD. And so we're starting to work on education about irrigating our yards and the areas that we can do to help limit that amount or minimize that amount that we would need to take. But at the rate we were going, 25 million gallons per day is what we anticipate within the next 15 years or so.
Okay. Any idea, and I don't mean to put you on the spot unfairly, but any idea of where along that spectrum between now and 2040 we would cross into 19 million MGD?
So we anticipate 19 million by 2025.
Yeah. So it would be an incremental increase.
It would be. Yep.
And so could you explain for all of us, please, the the financial ramifications and any other significant ramifications that you see once we get above the 18.5 million gallons per day?
So there is a financial impact. We pay a demand charge. That's what the 18.5 plus a volume rate charge. And so if we take the bump, which is a million gallons to 19.5, it's about a $350,000 a year increase total, just for the demand charge plus the volume rate charge. The other thing that does is as we add demand to our system, it increases our processes, it increases the strain on our system, and so more pumping, more mechanics that go into the system, providing the water across town, and so it's just a matter of how we maintain and operate our system in order to keep up with the demand of using more water pumping through the pumps and the water towers and the ground storage tanks, and so there's an infrastructure cost that is tough to say how much that is, but there is a maintenance for that.
Sure. Although, just so that everyone understands, I mean, our maximum capacity is in excess of 42 million gallons a day, the way the current system is built and constructed.
The current system can handle considerable amount more. It's just a matter of how much are we willing to pay for and how much we take.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Garza. So, I guess, now that we've gotten all that information on the table, which I greatly appreciate, I guess my biggest concern is just the severity of at least one aspect of these proposed watering restrictions, and that's largely with respect to stage 1, which would be year-round, going to the mandatory 2 days a week only from May 1 to September 30, which is a rather lengthy period of time, would effectively put us into mandatory stage 2 automatically for almost half the year.
For the summertime.
And could we instead just make the 2 days a week voluntary for stage 1 year round, and then if we need to go into stage 2, go to the mandatory? Otherwise, it seems like such a significant overlap that it almost renders stage 1 meaningless.
Right. That is an option. The idea obviously was to start encouraging folks to begin the 2-day watering, which is what Texas AgriLife, I'm not a lawn expert, but that's what they recommend. Yards, all you need is 1/4 inch to an inch a week, and so 2 days a week will get you that amount of watering for your yard, and so that's how DWU has recommended and has asked majority of their customer cities to follow in line with what they do, and so that was the intent. There is overlap. I do see the opportunity there. It's something we could look at and see if that would make more sense.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. It's just the idea is we want people to understand that water conservation and irrigation is an important matter.
Well, absolutely, and I agree with that as a principle. I guess we're effectively moving everyone into stage 2 automatically for 5 months a year, which suggests that since the watering, necessity for the balance of the year is really so much less, that we're really just putting everyone into stage 2 for the period of time.
Yeah, we can review that and see what could make more sense.
I'd like to keep it voluntary, and then we reserve the. Let me ask you this: what is it up to your office and the city manager's office to decide if we go into stage 2?
That is one what we call trigger threshold that would require that. Yes, one would be primary one would be Dallas. If Dallas called and said, "Hey, we lost a pump station here, we can't provide you water," that would send us into a stage.
Sure.
But yes, ultimately it would be our operations along with city manager's discretion determining. It's based off our supply and our demand, the demand, and if we can keep up with the supply, the demand, if our supply can keep up with the demand, and there's a threshold, if it's 85% for 3 consecutive days, we're not filling our storage tanks back up because everybody's watering and we can't catch up, that would trigger stage 2. Or if we have a water line break that's causing all of our water loss, So there's different thresholds or triggers that would cause us to go into those different stages, and so.
And see, this is kind of, I think that kind of brings me to my point, and I know that everyone was hoping that I would get there. I think all those types of triggers that you identified, failing equipment, just usage of water, taking us up into a higher level, all of those are things that we can explain to people that we're now going into stage 2 for this reason. And I think people understand that and appreciate it and are more likely to be more accepting of it, and therefore I think more compliant. So I would rather leave stage 2 as it is, leave stage 1 voluntary, and then if the need arises where, in y'all's judgment that there's an adequate trigger to take us into stage 2, then we do that with explanation to everyone why we're doing that. And I think that would also help to increase our compliance rate, as well as just, explain to people this is why we're now going to this level. And that would be my 2 cents on this.
Yeah, one thing I did fail to mention, and it's just the recommendation of 2 days, it helps train the lawn to maintain the moisture for those 2 days, so the roots can have enough moisture when you're only watering 2 days through those summer months, and so that's...
Fair enough. And I understand the urgency of all this, but that would be my distinct preference if we could. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Matthew.
Thank you, Mayor. With the existing ordinance in place, how many people did we penalize last year with $500?
I don't believe we penalized anybody.
Okay. How many repeated offenders were there?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I know we had to reach out to several folks a few times about their watering and non-watering days or watering times. The majority of our phone calls were related to folks that had leaks and didn't realize they had leaks. When we reached out to them, that's what it ended up being, was that there was a leak on the irrigation system that they didn't realize they had, and so they were able to fix those.
So what's the thoughts behind increasing from $500 to $2,000?
In the event that we do get into a serious situation where we have folks that are, because we did have some folks tell us, just find me, I need to water my yard. And so in situations where we become in a drought serious time frame and we are needing to conserve water, I think those are the times where we would really consider finding folks that are abusing the watering restrictions.
Thank you.
Councilmember Prem Kumar.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Garza. And I apologize if I'm repeating anything that Councilmember Jim Walker said, but for the benefit of our audience, my understanding is that we have been tracking our water usage for quite a few years now, and the last couple of years we came dangerously close to exceeding that limit. And then you're hoping that with this ordinance, we will be able to better control that, jumping off the edge of the cliff, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Garza, just a quick hypothetical situation for you, because in reading the the ordinance, obviously it was the discouraging planting of new landscapes, including lawns, hydroseeding, and sod, is part of the stage 1 restrictions. Hypothetically, let's say that there was a certain mayor pro tem in a city that rhymes with Schmappell, all right, and his lawn happened to die, and he was trying his best to bring it back to life, and he got an HOA notice that the lawn needed to be taken care of immediately, hypothetically speaking, of course. What would be a situation where any particular citizen or a particular mayor pro tem, how would we address that particular situation with the threat of fine or some sort of penalty from a group like an HOA or something like that?
Correct. So we did experience this last year when we were in stage 2. There are folks that do, for the same exact reason, so we do have a variance request in the ordinance that allows folks to submit a request and variance that have recently planted new landscaping or sod because of reasoning that they were in the process of installing that when we went into stage 2, so they just couldn't let it die. And so we do allow some of those variances, and there is a process for that. Over the course of the year, we will educate and highly encourage folks to do landscaping in the proper timeframes and not in the summer times. But we know that there are cases where it's not doable, so we do have a variance in their request.
Excellent. I appreciate that. And I think that's important for people to understand is that if they do feel like their backs are up against the wall because, they feel restricted from the ordinance, but also feeling pressure, that there is an avenue to be able to explore and remedy the situation.
Correct.
So thank you very much for that explanation. Hypothetically, of course.
Councilmember Carroll.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate your comments, Councilor Walker, on some of the situations. I think where I've finally sort of come down on this is I'm in agreement with moving toward this stage, and I think the real telling metric is, and I'm not going to get the numbers completely right, but our low peak for the year is roughly 7 million.
It's less than that. It's probably about 5 or 6.
5 or 6 million a day, whereas our high peak is approaching if it would be over 18 and a half if we did not manage it a certain way. Correct. And so we're talking about an 11 and $12 million variance between our low and our high. And with our, in general, I am in favor of people being able to do what they have, but we are in a large regional area that is going to continue to have more and more water concerns as this area grows. And anything we can do from an education standpoint, and not necessarily looking to be punitive or code enforcement, going down that route, as much as educating people of how we can minimize that gap between the high and the low, I think I'm in favor of. And so I am in favor of moving toward the step that has been outlawed. And I actually like, because I believe we went from 5 stages to 4 stages. Right. So theoretically streamlining sort of how, understanding where we are on the different phases. So more than anything, like I said, that metric of how few gallons we use in the winter compared to what we use in the summer between our irrigation and pools are probably the other big one, which the pools don't even necessarily get addressed with anything here. It's just irrigation. That's just really, there probably is some cushion there that we can all address. And so I would be in favor of moving toward this.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I will accept a motion. Councilmember Carroll.
Well, I move to approve consent agenda item C.
Thank you. Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Nevels. All in favor?
Hinojosa Smith, Carroll, Nevels, Prem Kumar, Matthew in favor. Opposed? Walker. The motion carries.
Thank you very much. Okay, item number 8 is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing. And this is to receive public comment concerning the City of Coppell's guidelines, criteria, and procedures for tax abatement agreements effective 2024 through 2026, and to consider a resolution adopting the guidelines, criteria, and procedure for tax abatement agreements and authorizing the mayor to sign. Ms. Hurley.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing me to come here tonight to discuss our tax abatement policy. This item is routine. This item is routine in nature, but it is a requirement of Chapter 312 of the Tax Code. Chapter 312 of the Tax Code does contain the statutes that govern tax abatements in the state of Texas. And so each taxing unit that wants to provide tax abatements must adopt a resolution that indicates the intent to participate in tax abatement agreements. The City of Coppell passed that a resolution back in 1993. But that same taxing unit must also adopt tax abatement guidelines and criteria by which tax abatement request will be evaluated. So the guidelines and criteria can be general to provide flexibility, or they can be specific. It's really each municipality's preference. And so these guidelines and criteria are effective for 2 years and must be amended and or readopted every 2 years. Before the guidelines and criteria can be adopted, a public hearing must be held to allow any kind of public comment. And so tonight, this is meeting that requirement. We're holding the public hearing, and then there's a resolution before you to adopt the guidelines and criteria for Coppell. The current guidelines and criteria were most recently adopted by City Council in April of 2022, and so this is just our 2-year readoption. They were written in a manner that allowed flexibility for tax abatements for both new facilities as well as the expansion and modernization of existing facilities, and they also allow for new businesses occupying existing facilities. So this flexibility is really important for Coppell now because there's limited land left for new development. And so many of our future incentives will be offered to businesses that are occupying existing facilities already. The guidelines and criteria allow for each incentive request to be heard on a case-by-case basis, and the decision for an incentive is based on the project's fiscal impact, community impact, and employment impact to the City of Coppell. Holding this public hearing and adopting those guidelines and criteria does not obligate the city to offer any or approve any tax abatement agreements. This is just our ability to consider them in the future. Again, each tax abatement agreement will be brought forward to City Council for consideration and approval prior to any offers being made. And if City Council desires at any time in the future, you all can amend these guidelines. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing, and before we get to questions, persons wishing to speak must sign the register and list their address outside the council chambers. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes per person. We did not have anybody sign up to speak, so council, do you have any questions for Ms. Hurley? Councilmember Matthew.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Hurley, thank you for the presentation. In last 2 years, how many incentives that we have provided to the business?
Tax abatements specifically, we've only offered 2 in the last 2 years.
And what about the incentives?
Beyond that, Chapter 380, we've also done some hotel incentives, so I would have to look at what our total is, but primarily the 2 large ones that we have offered were tax abatements.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Prem Kumar? He just shook his head.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Hurley.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to make a comment that it's very important for Coppell to be very selective and targeted about the businesses that come into Coppell. This tax abatement gives us the tools to go after companies that reflect our values. And when we have successful companies that contribute to our sales tax revenue, I think we grow as a city. So thank you, and I'm going to be supportive of this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Council, any other questions, comments? Well, seeing none, I will accept Mayor Pro Tem Nevels.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to close the public hearing and approve agenda item 8.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilmember Prem Kumar. All in favor?
Walker, Hinojosa Smith, Carol, Nevels, Prem Kumar, Matthew, in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item number 9 is consider approval of an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of City of Coppell, Texas combination tax and limited surplus revenue certificates of obligations, Series 2024, approving various documents related to such certificates of obligation and authorizing the mayor to sign. Ms. Tien.
Thank you so much for saying all that for me.
You're quite welcome.
So this item is really the next step from the meeting that we had on May 14th when council authorized the notice of intent for the bonds to be issued. And just as just to remind the public, the bonds are being issued for Royal Lane in the amount of $24 million, for Fire Station Number 5 in the amount of $11.5 million, and then for the Service Center improvements and construction for $12.5 million. That's the portion of this bond issue that is tax supported. There also in this bond is $5 million for water and sewer system projects, and that would be supported by the water and sewer revenue. And so tonight I do have Jason Hughes with Hilltop Securities with me this evening, and he is going to provide you with the results of the sale that occurred this morning regarding the Series 2024 bonds. In addition, Chris Settles, our bond counsel, he is with McCall, Parkhurst, and Horton, is with us virtually, right? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Hughes, and you should have this in front of your screens that he'll be referring to.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Good to be with you again tonight. And as Ms. Tian did say, you have in front of you a summary, so I'll go through that, and especially through the first couple of pages, and kind of focus on that. To kind of jump ahead a little bit and hit the punchline, we had a great day in the market. So very happy with that, and I'll go through those results. So as she did say, this is simply the second portion of what you undertook starting on May 17th with that approval of the notice of intent. Within that notice of intent, we have to include a maximum not to exceed amount. And so $53,500,000 was the maximum that we could issue. Let me go to the credit ratings first. So anytime we sell in the open market, we go and get credit ratings. As you know, you do have AAA, which are the highest credit ratings you can have from both Moody's and S&P. Those date back to 2008 and 2013, respectively. Turning to the next page, the certificates sold through a competitive process. And so what that simply means is we put these out and we allowed any qualified investment bank to submit a bid, and then the bid that produced the lowest true interest cost or average rate, if you will, was the winning bidder. And so as you can see there, we had 6 bids, with Robert W. Baird and Company being the lowest at a 3.78%. So this was a 20-year term, 3.78% that is locked in for the life of those certificates of obligation. The final par amount that we're asking for your approval tonight, $49,390,000. Those certificates sold with a premium. That premium covers all the cost of issuance, and then the remainder of the premium gets us to the point where we're generating the full $53 million for the project. So just as Ms. Tian said, $53 million, $48 million for general fund related projects, $5 million for water and sewer projects for $53 million total. That last bullet point there, as you can see there, these are callable after 10 years. And what that simply means is whenever we sold these to investors today, we retain the right to take those certificates away from them at a point in the future. And so whether you had excess dollars that you could use to outright pay off the COs early, or if you were going to refinance it much like you'd refinance your home mortgage, we again retain that right. So that is a right that rests solely with the city. Said another way, an investor cannot come to you and say, hey, I bought this maturity 20 years from now, I'd like to get paid today. They can't do that. So again, it's a one-way street in that regard. So I did say, again, 3.782% rounded, very happy with that. What that means, though, if you look back to the projections that I'd given Ms. Tian, and whenever we had posted the POS, it was a 3.94%. So we were about 16 basis points less. But what that translates into is just under $1.2 million less in debt service. So again, very happy with those results, and certainly no lack of bidders that were out there, or buyers that were out there bidding on City of Coppell's certificates of obligation. Assuming your approval tonight, we have closing scheduled for August 8th. And just as a reminder, what happens is if you approve it, all of the legal documents are sent down to the Attorney General's office of the state of Texas. His office reviews and approves all public debt sales in the state of Texas. So that's why we have roughly that 1 month lag. And that full $53 million will be delivered to the city. If you turn with me to the next page on the sources and uses, we do keep the 2 types of projects separate and for your accounting purposes. And so what we have provided or will provide are debt service schedules that tie to the general fund projects, debt service schedule that ties to the water and sewer project. So you can keep those totally separate within your books. And then on that last page there, as you can see, the debt service, again, same thing where we have your cash flows for your general fund projects, cash flows for the water and sewer projects, and then the total there. And of course, there's no debt service until next year, fiscal year 2025. So it gives you the opportunity to put that into your budget. Behind tab A, and I'll hit just a couple of high points here, these are the credit rating reports. And again, we have a AAA from Moody's, also a AAA from S&P. One of the things in particular I like about Moody's, if you look at that first page, is they go through credit strengths, but they also go through credit challenges. And so the challenge, the sole challenge that they brought up here, were sales tax collections could decline due to sales tax law changes. that is something that whenever we talked with them, we had a significant conversation about what the city has done, the planning you've put in place. So if there is a negative impact, and obviously it's tied up in the courts right now, but if there is a negative impact, City of Coppell is very well positioned. And quite frankly, both rating agencies like seeing that you have a plan. And you are in a position right now where you can institute that plan under what could be for other cities very challenging circumstances. One thing else that I would point to on that Moody's rating is down at the very bottom, factors that could lead to a downgrade. And again, your AAA, there's nowhere to go as far as going higher, but they talk about growth in long-term liabilities and fixed cost ratios. All that simply means debt, pension, OPEB. If you have other significant capital leases, if you have $15,000 for copiers, those aren't significant. If you had something for, $5 million, that would be. But they talk about if those go to 350% and 20% respectively. That 20% number, just to add some context to that, right now you're 8.9%. So it would have to more than double. So said another way, you're in very good or a very good financial position through using their metrics. The last thing I would point out is on S&P, they also talk about, what would happen as far as a downside scenario, and they talk about budgetary performance were to weaken materially. So again, the ratings, as I've talked to you in the past, they're historical in nature, they're current in nature, they're forward-looking in nature. So the AAA, even though you had it back in 2008, 2013 is when it was first assigned, you as a council have taken care of that. And again, the rating agencies also see what's going on, whether it's the sales tax legislation, whether it's knowing that there's other needs in the future, and they still arrived at a AAA. So you're to be commended for that. So with that, that is my presentation. I'd certainly be happy to answer any more questions or answer questions you may have or go into any more detail as you would like.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Walker.
Thank you, Mayor Mays. Thank you for that presentation, sir. I just had just a question. In the initial projection in Ms. Tian's memo, the bond issuance cost was projected at $500,000 for a total of $53,500,000. And in the sources and uses chart in the first section of your presentation, the cost of issuance total out at $263,000. Am I correct then to read that to mean that the cost of issuance came in lower than what we'd projected at the 500,000, or?
So it did come in lower, yes, sir, and that cost of issuance, so that covers my fee, financial advisory fees, rating agency fees, bond counsel fee, attorney general fee. So I typically go very, very conservative on that. And so, yes, it did come in below what we had budgeted.
Was that a function largely of the reduced debt cost?
It was a function of, in particular with the rating agency fees, their fees are a little bit more fluid, for lack of a better way of describing them. And so again, I'm always very conservative on that, and I don't want to come to a point to where I'm coming in saying, well, I estimated 200 and it was 500.
Oh,
so,
sure. But I mean, that's good news, though, generally
yes,
speaking. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Matthew? He just answered my question. Oh, all right. Any other questions? Councilmember Prem Kumar.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the information. I have two questions.
Yes, sir.
The first one is, I know we have the option to pay it off in year 10. My question is, like we do with our mortgages, like in year 2030, our principal payment is $1,265,000. Does the city have an option to pay double of that as towards principal?
So you can. What happens though is we have told the investors that they are locked in for that 10-year period, right? So if we would not have done that and we said, okay, we would make these callable anytime. For instance, in your example, I can pay off my home mortgage at any time, right, without any kind of lockout period, if you will. In the municipal market, if you do that, the cost goes extremely higher or goes a lot higher. So that 3.78% rate, if we had traded that off, that goes up significantly. So yes, we can do certain things. You can pay that off, but what that involves is putting money into an escrow and paying the interest on that through that call date.
Okay.
There are times when that can be advantageous, depending on, I know I'm getting into the weeds, so I apologize, but depending on what rates are in your escrow, sometimes that can money out, sometimes it doesn't.
Okay. My second question, again, the fees that the city pays to Hilltop Securities, that will also include the ongoing task of, I believe you will take care of the accounting, reporting, collecting from the city and making sure the Attorney General and all the other parties are paid.
Yes, yes, sir. So, and that's a great question. So the certificate of obligation issue is meant to be self-contained as it relates to fees. So all of the fees are paid from here. So yes, we do pay bond counsel, Attorney General, rating agency fees, all of those things.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Council, any other questions? Seeing none, I will accept a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, we need, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to remind you that there's certain motion language that you need to use.
And did,
Oh,
I have it, it's right here.
okay.
thank you very much. I guess that means I need to call on Councilmember Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of, quote, City of Coppell, Texas, comma, combination tax and limited surplus revenue certificates of obligation, comma, Series 2024, close quote, and approving all other matters related thereto.
Do I have a second from Councilmember Carroll? All in favor?
Walker, Hinojosa, Smith, Carroll, Nevels, Prem Kumar, Matthew in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, item number 10 is the city manager's report with project updates, future agendas, and direction from the work session. Mr. Land.
Thank you, Mayor. Real quick, are you going to cover a little bit about solid waste? Were you going to do that in your comments? No, okay. All right. So first off, we have South Beltline. We are down to the punch list items, and we are working on getting the digital sign installed. Woodhurst, the sanitary sewer installation is complete. 98% of the water line is installed. Storm drain installation is to begin within a week or two. Street paving from cul-de-sac to Hillhaven is complete, and sidewalks are being constructed. Fire station number 5, the contractor will start the installation of the storm drain on Thursday with lane closures on Moore Road, and will be finished with that work before the school starts. I know we have asked that question coming up. DART will have full lane closures on Freeport Parkway to install the tracks from July 26th through the 29th. We received news today that the Texas U-turn at 635 and South Beltline will begin construction by TxDOT on August the 12th, and it should be complete by the summer of 2025. That project, where's Mike? How many years has that been? Since I've been here.
As long as I've been here.
Yeah, and how long have you been here? 17 years, right. So finally. This is also the last opportunity for folks to participate in the Community Experiences Master Plan Survey. So visit engage.coppelltx.gov to take the survey and provide feedback there on the interactive map. So I want to say thank you to the community for your support, as Crowder Gulf picked up about 95% of all the debris during the month of June, and Republic has completed its first go-through in the community. In total, about 1,100 tons. I'm looking at Louie out in the audience. About 1,100 tons, so think about that, of debris was picked up during the course of that time period. There have been folks that have been in contact with Louie regarding some debris that still needs to be picked up, and so we're aware of that and are working on that as well. So my first thing, though, is I want to express to Louie and the rest of the team at Community Development, Louie specifically, though, yeoman's effort. Thank you. Personally following Crowder personally going out and visiting with residents and talking to them about their particular situation. Just an awesome effort on your part, Lue, and I know you had support from the rest of your community development team. So thank you for that, and thank you to our residents for your patience. When you drive around the community, it looks a lot different now than it did about a month ago. But we know that there's still some few challenges left out there that Lue and his team are addressing. So thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Item number 11 is Mayor and Council reports on recent and upcoming events. I did want to recognize a young man that had reached out to us and asked to shadow the mayor for a day, and that's Harshva Vinoth Kumar. You can wave to everybody. There you go. He is a junior at Coppell High School and is planning to enter the professional world after college in some aspect of government relations or some TBD. So bless your heart and good luck. I did attend the U.S. Conference of Mayors about 3 weeks ago in Kansas City. It was a very interesting agenda. One of the topics that popped out that I was not expecting, and it's the kind of things that you look for, was they were talking about the risk of cybersecurity on municipalities. We have discussed this topic here and have addressed it, but there was a number of organizations nationally that were getting involved. It was just interesting to see how some cities had embraced the idea and some were still completely clueless. As in retrospect, we are in extremely good shape compared to most of our sister cities. A couple of the other items that came up, the fentanyl crisis, the opioid crisis is attracting national attention at a very high level, and the mayors of the very large cities are really suffering from an ongoing crisis. There's a new drug that is being used to enhance fentanyl, and as potent as fentanyl is, there is an accelerant that is taken over. And the bad thing about the fentanyl is there is an antidote for fentanyl, and it is in all of our ambulances. It's in all of our medical kits. It's not 100%, but very effective against fentanyl. Unfortunately, this accelerant prohibits the antidote from working. And so while we were seeing a decline in fentanyl-related deaths nationally, this accelerant is starting to pick that number up again. That is causing all of the EMT groups across the country great problems. The other item that we talked about before was homelessness, and we are in a admirable position of having very few homeless in our area. We do the annual count, but the large city mayors are really struggling with this. And we are concerned as Dallas approaches the homeless problem there that we may see some overflow, and we are continuing to talk with our neighboring cities about that. So we, as we already talked about, as Ms. Tian already talked about, we are beginning a series of budget workshops, and we are encouraging residents and our business owners to join us and participate in those. And if you can't attend, don't worry, because all the workshops are recorded and archived, so you can watch them anytime via the city's website. Our first one is on next Monday, July 15th. We will hear presentations from local nonprofit arts and service organizations that are seeking financial assistance from the city. We'll also hear from our staff and discuss the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund and special revenue funds. Then the following Monday, July 22nd, we will hear from staff and discuss the city's general operating fund and debt service fund. And then 3 weeks from tonight, on Monday, July 29th, we will perform a final review of the proposed budget and discuss the proposed tax rate, since the comptroller should have the assessed values at that point. The budget workshops are open to the public and begin at 6 p.m. in the second floor conference room located here at Town Center at 255 Parkway. Details about each fund are available on our budget process webpage at coppelltx.gov/budget process. Council, anybody have any other items? Councilmember Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted very quickly to point out that I don't know how many people saw it, but the Dallas Morning News had a wonderful article about the Coppell Art Center. It had an incredible picture of the Art Center around dusk with it all lit up. The Chamber of Commerce couldn't have printed a more flattering or more complimentary article about our Art Center and talking about how it draws so many people into our community and how well attended the shows are. And I just wanted to compliment again everyone associated with the Art Center, including the Art Center Foundation, for all that they're doing to bring such wonderful attention to our city.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I did have one other item, just as a note. After the recent storm that blew through the Houston area yesterday, we have dispatched one of our fire department units down to assist in the post post-event debris cleanup. So we'll be thanking those guys for spending their time down in the Houston area. All right, item number 12 is public service announcements concerning items of community interest with no council action or deliberation permitted. Do we have any PSAs? Seeing none, item number 13. There was no executive session, so therefore we had no necessary action. And item number 14, there being no further business before the council, we are adjourned at 8:32 p.m. Thank you very much.